I want to call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the October 1st, 2019 meeting of the Grafton Select Board. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everybody could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up after that is announcements. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Good evening. I have a few announcements to make. One, I think all of us have read this in the paper lately, ban on vaping products. As many of you know, on September 24th, Governor Baker called for a temporary 4-month statewide ban on the sales of flavored and non-flavored vaping products in both retail stores and online. This applies to all vaping products and devices, including tobacco and marijuana. The ban took effect immediately and lasts through January 25th of 2020. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, along with the Food and Drug Administration, are currently investigating a multi-state outbreak of lung disease that has been associated with the use of e-cigarettes or vaping products, devices, liquids, refill pods, and or cartridges. To date, the CDC has confirmed 530 cases of lung injury across 38 states. While many of the patients reported recent use of THC-containing products, some reported using both THC and nicotine products. No single product has been linked to all cases of lung disease. In Massachusetts, 60 preliminary intake reports of unexplained vaping-associated pulmonary disease have been reported to the Department of Public Health. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health will be notifying all tobacco and vaping retailers that they must not sell vaping products and must remove these products from their shelves immediately. In addition, the town administrator signed a letter delivered by the Health Alliance to all the retailers. We will be assisting retailers in Grafton who will have questions about the ban. If retailers do not adhere to this ban, the town will issue a cease and desist order to ensure compliance. The town will be posting information about the ban on the Board of Health page of the town website. If anyone would like any additional information, visit www.grafton-ma.gov. Next up, we're all going to like this one. National Coffee with a Cop. Wednesday, October 2nd is National Coffee with a Cop Day. The Grafton Police Department invites you to share a cup of coffee with them on Wednesday the 2nd from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. at Dunkin' Donuts at 72 Worcester Street. Residents are invited to stop by and meet their police officers. There's no agenda, just a chance for residents to meet and share ideas and concerns that affect our community. Last but not least, the Community Harvest Home Festival and 5K. The Community Harvest Project will be hosting their annual Harvest Home Festival and 5K race fundraiser to celebrate the 2019 season. The festival will be held on Sunday, November 3rd, with the 5K trail run starting at 10:30 a.m. The festival will begin at 11 and go to 3 p.m. In addition to the 5K run, there will be live music, hay wagon rides, local beer, pumpkin catapults, apple cannons, wonderful, and kids crafts, bake sales, and raffles, to say the least. All activities will take place at the Community Harvest Barn located at 37 Wheeler Road. That sounds like a great time. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you had one from the chief about the patches.
Okay.
I thought I sent you an email on it. I'm sorry if I didn't. But Chief, you want to talk about the pink patches?
Oh, yeah.
For 1 second, I'm
Yep.
sorry.
Nope, that's fine.
I hope they have an LTC for those apple cannons.
I'm sure you'll be up there checking that out.
Yeah, check the permits.
Just duck.
Thank you for having me. Very quickly, thank you for announcing the Coffee with a Cop Day. We're looking forward to seeing a lot of people there. And we want to thank Grafton Dunkin' Donuts. They're providing the coffee and the other treats, donuts, munchkins, whatever. So, here to talk two things actually very quickly. The Grafton Police Association and the Grafton Police Department is proud to join over 400 public safety agencies across the nation and support the Pink Patch Project. The Pink Patch Project is an innovative public awareness campaign designed to bring attention to the fight against breast cancer and to support breast cancer research organizations in combating this devastating disease. It is estimated that approximately 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. This disease can have a profound impact on the patient and her loved ones. It is a disease, however, that can be effectively treated with surgery, radiation therapy, hormone therapy, and chemotherapy. The goal of this project is to increase education about the importance of early detection and prevention, and to raise funds to further research, treatment, and care of those who are or have battled cancer. All proceeds from the sale of our pink patches will benefit a nonprofit organization that assists in cancer treatment, research, and/or education. During October Breast Cancer Awareness Month, uniformed personnel are allowed to replace the standard shoulder patch with the Grafton Police pink patch. As you can see, don't adjust your dials. This is pink. Every officer will have one of their shirts with the pink patches on it, and they will be wearing it during the month of October. The patch is a reminder of our commitment towards raising awareness among those we serve. The Grafton Police pink patches, which I have one here, once again, are available for $10 each to purchase. To purchase a pink patch, please stop by Grafton Police Headquarters or send a self-addressed stamped envelope with a check or money order for $10 to the Grafton Police Association Pink Patch Project, 28 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass. All proceeds from this year's sales will be donated to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And very quickly, if I may, one other thing, we are beginning our annual Toys for Kids and Teens drive. Okay, we have a box set up in the lobby of the police station. We commenced this today, October 1st, through December 14th. There's also a box at the Homefield Credit Union. We're working with them, and we're in competition kind of, not only to get toys, but we're in competition with Northbridge and Uxbridge Police to see who can gather the most toys for this. So we'd appreciate it if we can get those bragging rights through the town. The town's always generous, and hopefully we'll have enough toys for all the kids that don't get them, and make a nice holiday for them. Merry Christmas. I know it's early to think about that, but comes up fast.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much, Chief.
thank you.
Patches look great, by the way.
Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, I don't think there are any further announcements. We'll open up the session briefly for public comments if anyone has any. Mr. Whitney. Microphone, state your name and address, please.
Yeah. Richard Whitney, 13 Greeny Drive. I'm here tonight to make a complaint to the board, of the board, okay? First of all, Tim, thank you very much for the phone call Friday, you and Joe. Great. But I sent out a message to all of yous on the board asking you a specific question. The only one that got back to me was Jen, okay? I thought we were having a transparent board this year of getting back to our people that voted us in. And it seems like, you know, this was on the 27th. I sent it out, one to you, Mr. Chairman, and I get no response. You were
Richard,
online. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Let me finish. You were online, and I asked you a specific question. And I asked Mr. Carlson and Doreen the same thing, and Jen. The only one who responded was Jen, okay? And kudos to her for doing that. And she told me she'd get back to me as soon as she could find out. I didn't even get a single beep from any one of yous. And to me, if, you know, you're sitting there representing me and everybody at home that's listening and everybody in here, you know, how can we get to you if you don't answer an email on your about a specific question?
Richard, I don't often get defensive in and how I do my job here, but I can speak only for myself when I say, in fairness, I have gone back and forth with you a lot over
Yes,
the
you
past
have.
2 weeks, taking time out of my day to answer your questions. And there are very, very, very many of them. So, in the event that I'm working or with family members or doing one of the many other things I have to do during the day, I apologize if I don't get back to you right away, which is why we have a public session that we didn't used to have until this month that you've taken advantage of now a couple times. So,
No,
What is
this
your-
is the first time.
what is your question that I can help you with?
My question is, how can the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, give authorization to the town administrator to put out for bid the land, okay, where we own before it goes to town article to be voted on? How can that be legally done?
Okay, before I answer that question, did you have a conversation with Tim about this on Friday?
Not on this part of it. We had a conversation about something else due to this, and how both him and Joe said, in the end, there will be a tower on that hill, okay? Which I know there will be. But for actually putting it right where it is, because I didn't get to ask him that specific question because I brought it to you on the board, okay? And I left the email, and I didn't expect to get, and the thing is, I understand you have a family, you have a job, okay? I don't expect you to answer it right away, but sometimes you do.
Right.
And I appreciate that, and I've told you that before, okay? But the thing is, how can you get to you besides just coming here if you can't come here?
Yeah, the
Okay.
other way would be to follow up with me and say, hey, I appreciate your time. I'm waiting on this answer, and that's fine. There's a fine line, Richard, between what I am supposed to be doing here as a representative and being a research assistant for every question that everybody in the town has. And again, there are a lot of them. So if I've failed in that respect, I apologize. The answer to your question is,
Well, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed of the way we're doing
I
it. Maybe it's
apologize.
me.
No, I apologize.
Maybe it's you. It's maybe both of us together.
Okay. Have you found a satisfactory answer to that?
No,
question?
I have not. I have not gotten one, and I don't understand how it can be put on a warrant article if it hasn't been voted on by the town.
Okay.
I mean, how can it be put out to bid? I'm sorry, put out to bid before the town meeting, and the town meeting is the 21st. The end of the bid is the 11th. So the 11th at what, 3 or 4 o'clock, whatever the time the town clerk leaves, it has to be in, has to be stamped, and then it's open the next day, I would assume, right?
Right. Tim, do you want to answer this question?
It would be open the next day, right?
Yeah, well,
And
well,
they're all
well-
public notices, so I mean, anybody can look at them.
Yeah, I mean, we need town meeting approval to transfer land.
That's right.
So we're gonna have information for them to consider. There's no legal prohibition against putting something on the warrant. In the RFP itself, it talks about needing town meeting approval to take action on this.
That's right.
So we can solicit, just like we did with Creeper Hill, we did that before without approval.
In fact, it would be pointless not to do that because then you would be going to the town with the proposal to which the details you don't have. So I would say to the town, do you want to sell this land? And they would say, well, for how much? And we would say, well, we don't know.
Well,
And then we would have to go back to them again later at a further town meeting. So what the prudent thing to do would be to have a public process where you're soliciting bids, going back to the town with a specific proposal, which is what we're doing.
well, I've been in the town, and you know this, and I'm not gonna, for a lot longer than probably some of you have been alive, okay? And the thing is, in my many years, is I've never heard of this.
Okay.
Okay? So for me, I'm not angry, I'm not mad, I'm just kind of disappointed the way it's going, okay? Of, you're putting something out, and I understand where you're coming from, okay, of what you're saying, but why, there's no sense of doing it that way.
I
If you
think
don't
there's-
have a,
I think there's a lot of sense of doing it that way, but again, I guess we take your point. If you want to do it another way, you can do it that way. It would take longer and would be less efficient to do it that way.
well, I mean, you gotta, I guess, do it the way you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it the way to maximize value to the town. And
Okay.
again, we're putting it in the lap of the townspeople with a specific proposal. If they want to follow through with something that we have on the warrant, they can vote for it. If they don't want to do that, they can vote against it.
Okay, but is it legal to do this?
Yes.
It is 100%.
Yep.
Okay, it's in bylaws and everything else.
There's no prohibition against it, so it's not illegal.
Okay,
Okay,
and stand on that, okay?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you
Thanks, Rich.
for clarifying everything.
Anyone else?
I just have one more question, Mr. Whitney, before you sit down.
Yes,
Just quickly, I apologize too. I'm looking through my email right now, and I'm not finding this email from you. Did you send it to?
Let me
the-
see where
the
I sent it
board
to you.
Email address, because I
I
would
sent it to you, Doreen DeFazio, at 1:10 p.m. on September 27th.
Okay, to the BOS email address.
It's the one that you and I have been talking to since the beginning of September 10th. I mean, here's all the emails that I have. Whoops,
Okay.
sorry about that.
Well, I apologize because if I didn't respond, I didn't see it, and I would suggest for
I mean, if
anyone
you
in the
have another
public- Yeah.
email address, I can,
So it's on the town website. There's an email address for me, and I would say this to anyone in the public who's
Okay.
looking. Yeah. So I just wanted to say
I've been
that.
using the one that you and I have been
Sure
talking
thing.
to back
and
and
that
forth.
might be a messenger or something, and I missed it.
Yeah.
But I apologize for
Okay,
that.
well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope you've received my stuff on the G5 and what it does to the town and everything else. All right? Other than that, I'll let you deal with these people and have a good night.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
All right, any further public comments? Moving on, although we have an agenda tonight, I want to move something out of order. Aaron Zaluski is here tonight on the vote to sign Red Ribbon Week proclamation. So, Aaron, do you want to, come up and tell us who you are? Right up to the podium is good.
Alright, so I'm Young Marine Master Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Zaleski. I'm with the Natchog River Young Marines based out of Danielson, Connecticut. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at Bartlett High School. With the Young Marines, one of our focal points is drug demand reduction, and that is basically getting all of the illicit drugs out of our communities. And one of the things that we do is Red Ribbon Week, and that is in the last week of October, where we have this big campaign for getting rid of drugs in our communities. So what I do is I go to the towns and I request proclamations so that each town could recognize Red Ribbon Week, and the town of Grafton has been so graciously to grant me a proclamation. So,
Thank you for coming in, Mr. Zaleski.
welcome.
So we do have here, the proclamation Red Ribbon Week 2019. I'll read it and then, we can take a vote to sign it. Whereas Red Ribbon Week is a campaign to show support for ridding communities of illicit drug use and those that traffic and profit from illicit drugs. And whereas Red Ribbon Week will take place on October 23rd through October 31st. And whereas the Natchog River Young Marines, located in Dayville, Connecticut, along with young Marines from many surrounding towns, will actively participate in this nationally recognized illicit drug awareness event. And whereas the Natchog River Marines proudly stand in support of and are committed to the fight against illegal drugs and those that promote their use, and whereas the Young Marine program promotes good citizenship, a healthy lifestyle is through education and awareness, and the best way to educate is to lead by example, and therefore be proclaimed by the Select Board of the Town of Grafton that the Natchog River Young Marines should be recognized as an outstanding opportunity for our local youth and for their continuing efforts to educate and promote a healthy, drug-free lifestyle, and be it further proclaimed that the Young Marine program should receive the support of the Select Board and the residents of our town for their positive impact on our youth and our community, and by wearing a red ribbon during Red Ribbon Week. In testimony whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused to be affixed the seal of the Town of Grafton in the state of Massachusetts this first day of October 2019. Thank you very much. Do we need a vote to sign this, or we just, I think we already did that.
Yeah,
we
you
did.
can just
Okay.
sign. How many proclamations, if I may ask, have you gathered?
So far, I've gotten 3 proclamations in the state of Massachusetts. I've sent requests for like 25, and hopefully in the coming weeks I got some more.
Good work, Sergeant.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We want to get those to him when we're done.
Yeah, I'm gonna take one picture of that first if I could.
No problem.
Thanks.
All right.
Take the sticky off. It'll look better if you take
the
the
sticky
sticky off. The sign here.
Yeah, I'll do that too. It's all ripping. It's like surgery.
Would I be able to get a picture with you with the proclamation?
Nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Zaleski.
Thank you for sporting the red ribbons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, public hearing, Dendy Acres subdivision road layout to Rozier Landing.
Okay. Read the public hearing.
Yeah, it's a public hearing notice. Dundee Acres, DeRoche's Landing is. Hi, how are you? Hi. It's gotta be over 10 years old in terms of getting this accepted, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, you and Paul might wanna come up and, after they read the public notice and open the hearing, you can present on, did it met all the criteria of the planning board and so forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
Legal notice. Office of Select Board, Town of Grafton, Massachusetts. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 82, Section 22, Mass General Laws, the Select Board intend to decree, lay out, and make public the following roadway known as DeRozier's Landing in the Dendy Acre subdivision, Grafton, Massachusetts. The Select Board intends to lay out the above referenced roadway in the Dendy Acre subdivision at its meeting on Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 at 7 p.m. in Conference Room A, Grafton Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Massachusetts. Notice was published in the Grafton News on September 19, 2019, and the Town Bulletin Board on September 13, 2019.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I move that we open the public hearing for Dendy Acre subdivision road layout.
all right, motion made,
Second.
motion made, seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, public hearing is open.
so the planning goes through this process. Many of you were on planning board before. They review the specification of the road, that it's built as to spec. Engineering goes out there, conservation goes out there, and DPW goes out there, and they all have to certify, along with, probably Jeff Walsh.
Yep.
That it was built to specification. The petitioner has to get that approved from planning, and then they have to come before the board for a layout, and then for a town meeting, which obviously this is on for a town meeting for October, to accept this road as a public way. And it met all those requirements.
Yeah, we met out there in August, myself, Charlie, Joe Layden, Jeff Walsh, Brian. Leah went out on her own, did all the boundaries, checked all the infrastructure. I mean, it's been built out for years. So all that's been functioning as designed and as expected. Met all of our expectations, everything certainly is complete, with the exception of the street lights, which Charlie's agreed to purchase when we move to the LED. We asked them to install LEDs several years ago, when the project first came up. And with our limited understanding of what it takes to put an LED up with National Grid's regulations, halfway through realized that it wasn't possible. And instead of throwing money at old high-pressure sodium lights to just be thrown away in a year, there's no sense. You know, they can wait another 6 months for those lights. It's been,
Okay.
and install the correct ones at the correct time and be similar to everything else in town, so.
And there's only two, so on this plan, I don't know if you can point, if we can just tell us where the lights would be.
One of them's on the left side of the cul-de-sac, as you're coming from,
Other side.
Yep.
that right there. Yeah, the other one's gonna be right at the beginning of the project on the same side, right at Elmwood Street, yeah. And that one's gonna be on a telephone pole.
All right,
Are there conduits and everything set up for
Yeah,
the lights?
that one there
Okay.
in the cul-de-sac, the pole is there,
Oh, great.
everything's all there.
Good.
And I have the wire and everything to connect it up. It's
Great.
just that, well, we didn't get that
Yeah.
done because we
Yeah.
didn't have all our answers.
all right, any further questions from the board? Anyone from the public? Questions, comments, concerns? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I will entertain a further motion.
I move the board vote to approve the Dundee Acre subdivision, DeRoche's Landing, as presented this evening and is approved by the planning board on August 26, 2019, and place the acceptance of these roads on the warrant for the October 21st, 2019 town meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, I have a question.
sure.
The Mylar, I'm gonna need to get that recorded, correct?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Is that-
Oh,
is
this
that-
Mylar, this one right here
Yeah.
that we're looking at, yes. So we'll have to sign it.
Okay,
Do we want to do it now? Can we wait for after the
You
meeting?
can, we can wait, cause it's gotta be, you wanna get it accepted at town meeting before you file it to deed, registry of deeds, right?
I would say yes, because if it doesn't,
Yeah.
for some reason
Yeah.
it doesn't
Right.
accept it, then it's-
accepted before the town meeting, right?
well, the town meeting has to vote to formally accept.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they voted to lay out the road as it is, and
Yeah.
that gives town meeting a level of comfort that it's gone
Okay,
through
so-
many, many levels.
Recorded after that,
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
so I can have that signed by them at their leisure before the 21st, and after the 21st, we can give it to you to record.
Okay,
All right.
all right,
Good plan?
thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Yeah, let's just make sure we sign this tonight before we all go home. Okay, next up, Board of Health here?
They're still upstairs.
Or in finance committee.
Okay, why don't we, skip over them and move to Grafton Upton Railroad?
Mike Malinowski's here from the Grafton Upton Railroad as a short presentation. We've had a couple discussions, he and I, along with the state rep, talking about ways to get a quiet zone in and get better gating and keep it kind of more quiet up there. But there's two pieces, I think, of Mike's presentation that he'll give you, and a lot of it will depend on what the board thinks the direction should be.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim and Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Normally when I come, I bring my general manager, John DeWally, who's on site all the time, who Tim and Becca deal with, but they had their first child on Sunday, so he's off duty. If I could go to the next slide. This is the continuation of the meeting that we had on July 30th, where I presented into the board some of the alternatives that we were looking at for the Route 130 and East Street intersection. And at that meeting, we had also gone out using federal funds and looked at the possibility of figuring out what the best long-term solution is for those intersections. And we had a traffic study done by PARS at the time that was released at that meeting, and we gave the presentation for that. With that, there were kind of 5 different studies or analysis that were done. They started to look at the 2019, the existing conditions are right now, which you all experience and drive through, and then what the intersection would look like in 15 years if nothing had changed, which is the alternative number 2 that's listed in the document. And then from there, they looked at 3 different alternatives, looking at different configurations of the roadway, which I'll go through in a moment, ranging from just putting the crossing gates that need to go into the intersection. And just to back up a second, at that meeting, we had stated that we were going to be going forward and putting in the new crossing, the actual rail through there. And we wanted to get that done before school started, which we did do in the end of August. So that part has been done, and we also ran the conduit under that. So as part of the upgrades that we've been doing throughout Grafton and other places, putting gate arms coming up and down. So that was to look at that piece that's coming, and that's what the federal government has supported in a grant that we're matching with the feds to do that. But as part of the study, it allowed for additional money and analysis to look at long-term solutions tied into this intersection because it is complicated. It's complicated from the standpoint that it has 3 legs to it, it has 3 different light cycles because it's not a square intersection. It's got 3 roads running into it, which in essence causes some significant delays. At the meeting on the 30th, we also had, as part of the consultant, had a video modeling of the different cars and how they travel through the intersection, so you can see it in real time what that would be like, which was at that meeting. And again, I'm going to talk about those components in a second. We did complete the crossing before the school opening. At that meeting, too, it was indicated by the chairman we were talking about other noise mitigation projects that we were doing. We had applied last year for what's called a Chrissy grant. That Chrissy grant would have allowed us to move the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. delivery from CSX when they drop the cars off into the yard, and move that and keep that out on the main line by building a third track, which there used to be out there at one point before it was taken down, which would reduce down some of the neighbors' impacts. And that's what the board asked me to come back to, and said that there would be a willingness to potentially support that grant application. Again, it does have some neighborhood benefits, which I'll talk about momentarily. Also at that meeting, we talked about, with these different alternatives, A, B, and C, B and C kind of require different roadway alternatives, and we would, again, need some direction from the board. And I want to emphasize, as I did on the 30th of July, is this is purely a decision of the Board of Selectmen. From the railroad standpoint, we can operate with these road improvements or without these road improvements. But the road improvements really look to the traffic going through those intersections in the future as a way of trying to leverage the federal funds to help out the town in the long run as well. And then finally, we had about a half a dozen residents that were here that night. The focus was on the horn going through the intersection. That was a real driver of concerns that were there, as well as in the middle of the night, the clanking that was going on from CSX dropping off the trains. So we, at that point, the board asked us to look at a quiet zone and requested to do some information on that, so that's what I'm here to present as well. If I could go to the next slide, please. So the next slide kind of just, talks about the existing intersection. Currently, right now, it operates at a level of C during the AM peak hours and a level D in the PM peak hours. Looking forward 15 years out, it's only going to get worse. Without any improvements, it would go down to an E and F during those respective hours. Next slide, please. This is alternative B, and kind of the major difference that you see with this is kind of redesigning some left-hand turning lanes coming south on Route 140, which is in your top right of the page. That's not drawn to scale, so that would leave it a little bit longer for more queuing of cars. But to allow that to happen, and also 140 north, breaking that traffic up. The purpose of those two changes was that when the crossing rates go down, it would allow straight through movement to continue to happen on 140. So that you would again be able to just move the queues through there as long as they were going straight. They would have a green light to be able to continue while the train was going through Route 130 and East Street. If I can have the next slide, please. This is alternative C. Alternative C was looking at trying to take this three-legged monster, this intersection with three legs, and turn it into two legs. And in essence, it would propose to dead end East Street so that you couldn't go up East Street into the intersection. You could only exit the intersection from East Street. It does show it kind of one way, with 2 arrows going down there, but in practicality, it would be a dead end for those residents to have, in essence, their own neighborhood with only one-way traffic going through there versus two-way traffic. In that, in and of itself, as presented, and if I can go to the next slide, in the traffic counts, showed that alternative C, and what I have highlighted here is just some of the important numbers to kind of look at. If you look at 2034, which is right in the middle of the page, you've got a 74-second delay is what that's anticipated to be. If you look to the left, it was a 30.4 seconds, which is what it is today. So it's expected to double in intersection delays without any modifications. And then if you go down to the bottom, it goes from 41 seconds to 118 seconds. And again, that's the combined calculation for those intersections. And then you can look at alternatives A, B, and C from there with the different components. And clearly it shows that alternative C with the one way is going to have it's going to actually provide, at least in the AM commute time, better service than what you have today by, in essence, going from a three-legged intersection down to a two-legged intersection. If I could hop to the next slide. So again, these are all in the report, and with that, and again, I'm just repeating myself from July 30th. Alternative C had the best impacts, meaning mitigation, the best solution. But at the very end there, it does have some neighborhood impacts. Because there will be some folks, and it'll be a limited amount that's shown in the report, that will look at some side streets where they can no longer exit East Street into the intersection. So again, there will be some impacts that are there. So that was identified in that analysis.
Mike,
So-
can you just, for that point, can you just kind of couple together for us the quiet zone initiative?
Let me get to that because that's coming right in there. So,
Thank you.
so before we even get to the quiet zone, is that, and I have information on that, the traffic study said, and again, pure decision of the town, you guys get to make the decision on this, is we can continue to operate like you're doing right now at alternative A, or B or C. It's really a call of the Board of Selectmen, you get to make that decision. Now, moving forward, a couple data points that have changed since our last meeting. These are actually changes to the good. The first is that Mass DOT has submitted a funding request for Ray Street to incorporate Ray Street into this project because they're so close. Is that we want to make sure the crossing's there, and that's tied into this whole piece. So that funding piece has been moved forward. The second, and to Tim's point, is this quiet zone. We have done some preliminary research on the quiet zone, and I'll go through that in a second. And the challenge with the quiet zone, as you'll see, is that you're putting in potentially additional gates and also a traffic median in there, so cars can't kind of go around the gate. And you've probably seen these in other communities. It's a raised island right before you get to the crossing, so you're stuck there. You can't go around. You got to wait for the train to pass without trying to run into it. And then I'll talk about the Christie grant at the end. So the next slide, please. Oh, perfect. So as part of the quiet zone, and again, just some additional analysis on that, this is an application that the town will have to make to request FRA to designate this zone. It has to be, I think, more than half a mile or 3/4 of a mile long, a quiet zone. With that quiet zone comes additional mechanical improvements because, in essence, you're shutting down the horn. The horn's there for a purpose, for a safety purpose. If you're going to eliminate the horn, which is what the residents wanted, then you have to then put in the mechanical components to make that happen. And obviously there's a liability component there. That's why you're putting in the mechanical stuff and getting rid of the horn. The middle paragraph talks about that there is we'd have to seek some additional funding from that with the support of the board. There is the first hearing on the Joint Transportation Committee on the Transportation Bond Bill that's coming up on October 8th. And earlier last week, Tim and I were able to give a tour of your state rep of the facility and showed them what we were looking at, because again, it's been in the press, and his comment was that he's more than willing to support the Board of Selectmen in whatever decision you choose to do. So if you want to do the quiet zone, then he's willing to help lobby to get the funding for that to make that happen.
How much funding do we need to make that happen? What are you looking for the transportation bond bill?
So right now, we've got some numbers that we're batting around, and it's probably somewhere around $500,000 that would be tied into it. It's not a huge number in relative to the transportation bond bill, and it would also be tied into matching some federal funds as well. We haven't gone through and done the detailed dollar analysis. Right now, we're still looking at the geometric feasibility. Is it going to fit, and what's it going to take? So preliminary engineering shows that, and I'll explain why it really only works on Site C. Can I have the next one, please? So this slide is obviously not this intersection, but I show this slide in the top right picture. You can see how complicated some of these crossings can be as you get into different types of configurations. The bottom picture on the right shows two gates. Two of the gates are for the sidewalk, and two of the gates are for the road, and again, that's just going in one direction. The slide on the left just gives you an idea of some of the engineering analysis that goes into there. Next slide, please. This is a slide that really points out what our challenge is, and as you see in all of these, there's medians that are in there. These are the raised medians that I talked about before that allows cars not to be able to go around the post. There's some type of statistic out there that 90+% of all the cars that impact a train, and I use the word cars impacting a train, And really what I'm saying is car and train crashes, I think it's 92% of all accidents happen when the front of a car hits the side of a train. You know, and it's people trying to beat the train or trying to drive around it. That's generally what happens there. The bottom left is Massachusetts. It's on the Greenbush line, and you can again see the raised granite that's in there, you know, trying to make that piece. And go to the next slide. This is, and I'm just going to skip this one and go right to the next one. This is Waterville and East Street. Just trying to identify, you know, how the crossing gates would be. This is the engineering work that we've done since our last meeting. Now what this shows is this just is first starting, assuming it is the horn's actually working. This is not a design of the horn-free zone. This is what the intersection would more or less look like without a horn zone in there with the gates. If I can go to the next slide. And in essence, this is, we're still trying to measure this out because as you can see, Waterville heading, I guess that's east to the top piece is, you know, we can make the median work in there because there's no issue. But using a standard median and the length that is recommended, it kind of pushes us out into 140. Now, we can pull that back and get a waiver so it doesn't extend as far, but it really can't extend farther than East Street where that connects into it because you got to get the cars around there. But certainly, if you kind of envision if East Street was two ways, it kind of makes it problematic for putting a median in the other way. Which really comes down to an engineering geometric issue is there's not enough space on East Street with Waterville to keep both of them two ways with the median in between those to make it a no horn zone. So it's kind of precluding that, you know, if the no horn, the whistle free, the quiet zone is implemented, is that you're kind of pigeonholed, and to Tim's point, into making East Street a dead end to one way in order to fit that geometric improvements that are in there. And that's kind of the analysis that we've come back on here, just trying to look at that. You can actually leave that there. So that's kind of where we are as it relates to the update on this, you know, whether or not a quiet zone is feasible. Yes, it's feasible, but it's really only going to be feasible under Alternative C. But again, that does have some impacts to the neighborhood, but it also has some huge benefits to the neighborhood too, because you're not using the horn through that area. And again, I started this presentation. I'm going to end this part of the presentation. This is a decision of the board. The railroad will run with or without a horn there, depending upon what configuration that's there. It's just that, you know, in my relationship with working with Tim and Becca is that here's an opportunity to give you guys an option. Do we want to try to leverage the federal funds to help mitigate some additional items that are in here? And I can take questions on that, or I can hit the last part of the presentation, which is a little bit different, but.
I do have one question. So Tim, has our traffic safety committee reviewed any of these proposed plans?
Initially, this went to them beforehand, and that's why the chief stuck around, but traffic safety committee met with Grafton Upton early on.
Yeah.
And then in July 30, you had the report.
I missed that.
Yeah.
So my bad.
So
But traffic study committee hasn't discussed the quiet zone yet
That's
because
right.
that just came out of your last meeting, and we've just kind of finished up this preliminary analysis. So, you know, I think everybody's kind of looking as to, you know, do we continue this or, you know, do we not? I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now because these federal funds for these improvements we have to have expended by June 30th of next year, which would include some of the signal modifications to it.
I have a couple questions. Have you done any outreach to the neighborhood to find out what they would prefer, a one-way East Street with a quiet zone or a two-way East Street?
Yeah, so we haven't done that, and again, you know, from the railroad standpoint, we're okay with leaving it two-way. It doesn't impact us at all because we're gonna have crossing gates on it no matter what. So we haven't done that outreach. I think that that's something that, you know, would be up to the Board of Selectmen to have that outreach. We did have.
anecdotally, we got feedback through, the chief got some feedback when we talked about it even at this meeting on the 30th, so we haven't done any direct
Okay.
outreach, because we just didn't know what the will of the board was to.
Well, I think in order for me to make a decision, I'd like to know what the neighborhood wants,
Sure.
because
Right.
they're the ones that are dealing with the horns. They're the ones that will have to deal with East Street if it becomes a one-way. My other question has to do with the horns, in that you talked about adding a third track so that the train cars could line up there, so
Sure.
you wouldn't be crossing back and forth as much.
Yep.
How much reduction in the horn blast would you expect that to allow?
So let me address that in the latter part of the presentation, because
okay.
that's in there, because I can address that. You know, what I do want to say is that we did go to FRA, and basically at each intersection, we're required to blow the horn when we go through each intersection. We were able to go back and have these two streets, you know, they function as one with the horn going through there, so we were able to reduce the horn blowing in half. But at the meeting on July 30th, clearly the concern of the neighborhood that was there was twofold. One, primarily was the horn blowing going through the intersection, and the second was the clanking and the deliveries running at 1 a.m. in the morning. And we're not, the railroad, the GNU, our staff, no one's operating, you know, after 6, 7, 8 o'clock. We're just not. We're closed down, and then we come in at 6, 7 in the morning. But what happens, and you'll see why, is that CSX drops off the cars at 1 a.m. And and it takes about 2 hours for them to come in and do that, because they have to air test brakes when they pull the other cars out and pull back on the main line. That's the noise that people hear at the end from that standpoint. But again, the feedback that we've gotten, even when we were down doing the construction of the crossing, was the horn's the big issue. I think even one person said at the last meeting is that they no longer worry about the propane, because that's proven to be safe. It's the horns and the clanking that's the noise that's bothering everybody.
Well, and this is a new, we haven't had that noise in the middle of the night before, so that's new, correct? for
No, the noise has
CSX?
been there every night
There's
ever
not
since.
more train cars there than there used to be?
There may be more train cars, but the delivery time's always been the same from CSX. And actually, let me go.
Do you have a contact for CSX too, so that?
Oh,
we
I can
talk-
give you those, and absolutely.
I just want to make sure we're clear on one point, if I could.
Yep.
The third track
Yeah.
is on Old Westboro Road. Oh, Westboro Road.
Westboro.
Yeah.
Right across from the white building, along the main MBT.
Right, it's a parallel track
Not
on the main
anywhere
line.
near this location, so I just don't want anybody to be confused. They're talking about
Okay.
storing cars that won't pull down here and clank at 1 a.m. They'll be offloaded off the main line on that.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
if that will solve the noise issue.
That
Right.
Chrissy Grant that he's gonna talk about next will, I don't solve, I won't say that, you might.
Well, I don't think you can ever solve. It's how can you mitigate it to make it the least impactful as possible, and that's what we're trying to do. From a CSX standpoint, I will tell you that the state has challenges in. CSX does things their way, and they're going to do it their way, and they're not going to change things. The state's even offered them grants to put in auxiliary power units so the locomotives don't run in neighborhoods, and CSX has not installed them. So, I mean, we'll get you CSX contacts, but the state's not getting much out of it. If I could tie into the Christie grant and then come back, I think this would help. So we have this grant, it's actually due October 16th, not the 14th. And it'll reduce 75 miles of travel on the Worcester Main Line. I'll explain that. And the benefit is that it will allow CSX to drop off the trains right on the main line on a third track. Right now there's 2 tracks, so it'd be a parallel track to that they could drop them off of without coming into our yard at 1 a.m. So if you look at the bottom, if I go to the next screen, so at the very bottom of the screen, on the far left is, arrows pointing to Selkirk, New York. That's where the rail cars come in. And those black lines are vertical black lines. One is Worcester, the second is Grafton, and the third one over on the right is Framingham. So let me explain how this works, and it is a little bit archaic. Is the train in the green comes in from Selkirk loaded with rail cars, and it's heading to Framingham. And so it goes by our facility sometime in late morning, and we wave at the cars going by, and then they drop them off in Framingham, and they wait there a day or two. And then from there, they load them back on another train, and they drive all the way to Worcester. And we watch them go by a second time. Then from there, sometime around midnight or so, they leave Worcester with another train, and they come back to Grafton. So there's the third time that it's actually past Grafton and actually stops in Grafton. That's the 1 a.m. delivery. Sometimes it's 2 a.m., but it's usually 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. is when they start coming in to drop off the trains. From there, then they load up what other trains they have, and they head back to Framingham. And then the next day or the day later, they pick the trains up in Framingham, and they drive out to Selkirk. And so those red lines going back and forth, the mileage of those red lines is a little over 75 miles, going back and forth 3 times on the main line. And so what we're proposing is by putting in this third rail, which would have an on and an off, a switch at both ends, that CSX can drop when they're coming into to Framingham. They can pull off, get off the main line, disconnect their train, because they would preload it out in Selkirk, so our cars would be on the back of the train, and whether it's 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 cars, whatever it is, they would just disconnect those cars on the main line. And they haven't even crossed Westboro Street yet. They're still on the main line. And then the train keeps on going, and then our trains can then go out to the main line to that third track. We won't be able to get on the other 2 tracks, but on the ones where they drop it off, we can then pull those rail cars into our rail yard during the day and move things. It's safer when the light's there, and it's daylight hours. It's not trying to wake people up at 1 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning. And then at the same token, when that train leaves Framingham to go back to Selkirk, we would load our empty cars out on that third rail, that siding, we'll call it a siding, that's a third rail, but it's a siding. And then as they're heading back out, they would just back up, pull those, and then head right to Selkirk. And again, that would eliminate the possibility. So by doing that, that could all happen in daylight hours versus the 1 a.m. piece that we have. And, that's in essence what this grant is. It's that, plus it's also, if I can go to the next slide, Becky, it's 2,400 feet of new siding that would be done with 2 electric lock switches, so that keeps MBTA off of it. And this would allow that CSX freight train to properly set off block cars on this siding without having to go into our yard, which is what that is. I can have the next slide. So in addition to that, what we're also looking to do as part of the grant is 2 things. One is upgrade our rail on the actual steel rail from an 85-pound rail to a 115-pound rail. It's just a little stronger rail, obviously by the weight. That's how many pounds per foot the rail weighs, but it's a little taller and it's a little bit stronger. And then this grant would also allow us to do 9 additional rail crossings that go through the town on its way to Upton that would need to get updated. A lot of these are not necessarily on main streets, but they're on more side streets that would need to be upgraded, and this would allow for that to happen. I can go to the next slide.
All 9 on in Grafton, though.
All 9 are in Grafton. What I have is, this would start with Ray Street. If I can go to the next slide, then we got Carroll Road, and the next slide just shows, a few others. Carroll Ave, Browns Road, Old Upton Road, Tracy Ann.
Weren't these all just upgraded?
No, these ones have not been upgraded.
Oh.
These are additional ones. Believe it or not, there's a lot of crossings that most people never drive by because you're on the main roads, and when you go through some of the side ones, you find them. And then I guess my last slide, if I could just go to that. This is our engine house that we have built. Here you can see 2 locomotives in there. In addition to that, we also have room for 4 auxiliary power units called hot starts that we can plug in outside. And again, as I had presented on the 30th, and I think in the past, the objective was to build this locomotive facility so that we don't have to have locomotives run 24/7. Again, a locomotive does not have antifreeze. If it's not running and it gets cold and it drops below 40 degrees, then all the water comes out of it. So it always has to be running, or it always has to have an auxiliary power unit heating the water so that it doesn't freeze. And by putting it inside the building or hook it up to the additional 4 units we have here, again, I'm trying to do, since I took over the railroad, trying to do as much as I reasonably can to mitigate neighborhood impacts. There's always going to be neighborhood impacts. There have been for 100 years. I'm just trying to mitigate where we can jointly partner to make some of these things happen. So that's kind of where we are.
So if I may add, to Jeff's point, I too agree. I would like to hear what the community would like to say, because as you're mitigating one area of a neighborhood that's been impacted by more than the usual horn blasts for the public way crossings, and the other noise which you had referenced at 1 a.m., which is the moving of the cars and the jerking back and forth, which creates that clinking noise. All you're looking to do is to mitigate the horn blasts at the rate of occurrence that's going on today, but then moving that sighting over off of kind of parallel to the Westboro Road area where the CSX line is today. So as you're moving that over in that area, I mean, granted you're moving that noise from one neighborhood, right? And you're moving it to another. So really all this is doing is it is making it simpler, but you're just reducing the horn blast at the end of the day. You're still, in essence, correct me if I'm wrong, you're still going to impact that area. I'm looking at the map right now where they're thinking about putting it. There's neighborhoods on either side of those tracks.
So if I could, let me break this up into two parts. The latter part is the Chrissy grant, which is building the siding, the third rail. Is that I think the key thing there is that by having the ability for CSX to pull straight in and drop the trains off there and keep on going, there's no clanking per se, because they're not trying to build things at that point.
Okay.
So they're pulling in, undoing the last car, and taking off.
Okay.
And that's happening in daylight hours. That's not happening at 1 a.m. In addition to that, you already have all of the trains going back and forth on the main line at high rates of speed, making huge noise, blowing their horns as they go through there on a normal process. Then when it comes back to pick up the trains to head to Selkirk, there will be a clank then, because they'll be coming in and then they'll have to back up and at least hook up to the cars that are going out and then blow their and do their air test. But again, that should be in daylight hours.
Okay.
So you've, in essence, by creating that, we've given CSX the opportunity to save 75 miles of travel, which saves them gas. That's their purpose for benefiting from this. But at the same time, it helps the town out, or the residents of the town, by taking that nuisance that's 1 a.m., that's not us, it's CSX, and keeping it on the main line where you have the high rates of speed going all the time.
What's their incentive to do that?
CSX, two. One is that it saves 75 miles of travel back and forth, emissions and fuel, and it saves a lot of manpower. And that manpower is every time they disconnect it. So with a train, it's when you disconnect it and you go to hook up something, you then have to take a few minutes for the air compressor in the main engine to power the compression line through all the cars. And you got to test that to make sure it works, which means you got to run it and then stop to make sure the brakes all work and before you can go. So that's a labor each time. So when I was going back and forth on that slide, they're doing that in Framingham. They're doing it in Worcester. They're doing it in Framingham. They're doing it in Worcester. So there's an incentive for CSX to do that, and I'm actually meeting with somebody on CSX Monday to talk in more detail about this, and the intent is that we would have them as a co-sponsor of this grant.
Great.
But your point, Ed, is really good, because CSX only does what CSX want to do, so there's got to be an incentive for CSX, and I think we've made a case for that to make that happen. They can improve efficiency and save money. That's what it boils down to.
Yep.
And then for them getting that benefit, from the state standpoint, why they're willing to support this is because that takes additional travel off the main line for 75 miles that it doesn't need to go back and forth. It creates a siding that there's the closest siding, I don't know if it's to the east or to the west, one's 8 miles and one's 10 miles. This gives them an emergency siding should the commuter rail ever need that. And it just improves efficiency all around. It reduces emissions that's down there. And then again, the benefit of the town here is that we can create the opportunity to move that nuisance out of the yard and do that. And I will tell you this, just to finish your question, I can't guarantee you today that CSX is going to do this. We can only establish the environment for them to do it and then sell them on it. but I think it would be foolish for them not to do it because there's no benefit of not doing that.
Right.
That's there, and they're also have a manpower shortage anyway.
Right.
So this helps them out from that standpoint. So Peter, to your point, that's the piece that's moving out there. I don't see that as impacting another neighborhood because you're two different time zones, and you have people that are in a more of a quiet zone than the main line going through there. And so that activity is going to be in daylight hours. So I see that as a positive. That's, again, my opinion. You guys get to make that decision. As it goes back down to East Street and making that a dead end / one way, again, that's a decision for you guys to make with community input. Is having a no horn zone through there worth the inconvenience, or it could be benefit for those 8 houses that live on that part of East Street. They may say, you know what, I don't want two-way traffic if I can have kind of a cul-de-sac type neighborhood. Again, their decision, your decision to figure that out. But as Tim and Rebecca have been talking, is that this just gives opportunities that would not have happened if we weren't all working together. But I still, as I've started and I've said a few times, it's your decision
Sure.
as to how you want to go about doing this.
Tim, can we go back to that slide with 140 and East Street, the proposal again? There you go, that's good.
Yep.
I guess I have a bigger picture question for Tim and Becca. Have you guys had conversations with Joe Layden about, again, because we're trying to do development and create, housing and economic development up off Route 30, this intersection has been a concern of this board. I know a growing concern over the past couple of years. A lot of our complaints that we get, in addition to the noise at night, is residents who live on Waterville Road who are experiencing a hard time getting out of their driveways, and people commuting, going towards Shrewsbury and Route 20 and Route 140. And I know in the morning, traffic coming off of Worcester Street trying to get in this direction is just a mess. So this is one part of it, but do we have a larger plan to address this issue in addition to just the railroad?
Yeah, I mean, part of what the transportation bond bill request we would make is to synchronize those lights at Bridge Street, St. Connor, and this light right here. Two owned by the state, one's owned by us, or two by us, one by the state. I forget the scenario. But we need to upgrade all of those to be preemptive signals, preemptive different than railroad, but for public safety. So they'll get green lights when there are fire trucks going north or south on 140 right through. So yes, but relative to the economic development piece, when they do UPS and things like that, they'll have to look at this under the Mass MEPA process anyways. But all these things that we're talking about doing with the transportation bond bill money will be improvements that'll enhance probably the stepping stone for them to do more, because they'll have to do more if those big developments have to happen up there. This intersection will have to be looked at.
Okay.
So tied into the study that was done for this in that table that I showed, that did incorporate, some of these new developments that are in the pipeline for you guys. So it didn't look at just at normal background growth. Background growth is what their projection would be under normal circumstances. Mm-hmm. It actually looked at a little bit more aggressive, knowing what you guys have teed up for economic development, trying to look at, I don't want to say the worst case scenario, but, somewhere in between what it normally would be and the worst case scenario, just to beef that up.
Okay.
The other thing is that, you're challenged, as we all are, with this intersection just because of the geometric issues that you have there. I mean, it's just tight with, where it used to be 3, cow paths coming together.
Right.
And that's what you're stuck with, and that they turned into roads and they squeeze cars, and Humvees on these tiny little streets, particularly East Street, that's not designed for that.
Right.
How long would East Street be one way? To what road?
It would be up to, it would just be up to Prospect Street.
Just up to Prospect?
Yep, so if I look at a map here that I have, I think there's about 4 or 5 houses on each side of East Street as it goes up there. So you're about 10 residents that, would in essence have a dead end one-way street that was there. Probably, ideally, it would be great to have that just a complete dead end, but I know the chief would, in public safety, is you want to be able to have East Street as an evacuation piece to
Right.
do there. And we did talk about that briefly, but that was ruled out just because of, well, you got the fire station up here, you want to at least be able to get them out. And so that's why it was looked at being one way out. And again, that solves the three-legged intersection because now you're down to a two-cycle intersection, which is why without the no horn zone, why alternative C works better because the light cycle is going to be faster because you don't have to wait as much.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to know when the Chrissy grant is due on the 16th of this month. Is that what you
The
said?
Chrissy grant is due on the 16th of this month. You know, as from our last meeting when it was mentioned that the board would be interested in supporting the grant, I would ask the board to, again, these are all your decisions that are here, but I would ask the board to support having the chairman send a letter of support for the grant, just so we can get that processed. When I was meeting with the state last week, they were like, well, what does the town of Grafton say? Well, speaking of, I'm meeting with Tim and, told him about the July 30th meeting. So if you guys are willing, I'd at least like to leave here with the support for supporting the application to do what I said about putting the siding on the main thing. That decision, if you vote to that, does not mean you're making East Street one way. So again,
Right.
two separate projects.
Right.
And, but if you could do that, that would help move this along. And just get everybody lined up that we need to do, and then however you want to deal with East Street is clearly still your decision how you want to do with that.
The quiet zone grant, that was due October 14th, is that correct?
So the quiet zone is tied into the transportation bond bill,
Oh, the
and
transportation
that
bond bill.
is having its first hearing
On the 14th.
next
Okay,
week, I
that's where
think
got
it
the
is.
14th.
Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't have, so your state senator and your state rep don't have to submit it that day, it's just that that's when they're gonna start their hearing discussion on that.
Okay.
So it'd be ideal to move that forward, sooner rather than later. And I mean, I'll throw this out too, is, we've shown the engineering why it needs to be one way. But, it probably doesn't hurt to send a letter of support to them as well and ask them to try to secure some additional funding to make this a quiet zone. Because as Tim said, there's a bunch of signal work that needs to be done too, in addition to what's happening. And, they need a process to go through as well while you're continuing to study with the residents whether or not to make, East Street one way or not.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I motion that the select board support the Grafton Up the Railroad to apply for a Chrissy grant and to authorize the chair to sign a letter of support.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Do you want to, any discussion on this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely support moving forward with trying to get the cars from not coming into the yard. That seems like something that may help with some of the issues that have been going on, while we further investigate the idea of a quiet zone and its impact on the residents on East Street and in the other neighborhoods. Because I know a lot of people use East Street as a cut through too. Like people go to work that way and they come out of East Street to go up towards Shrewsbury. So, they'd have to go a different way, and that would impact the neighbors on Prospect Street if then everybody starts to cut through Prospect to get over and out. So we do need to talk. We do need to have some community meetings and get some input from
Outreach, yeah.
outreach from those neighbors to see how they feel
Survey, possibly.
about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. What would the time frame be like? So if we were to send letters of support for the Chrissy grant and to Representative Meridian and Senator Moore,
That would be a separate one.
that would be a separate one.
Yep.
And then we would set up, at some point, I would hope a neighborhood meeting, advertised particularly for the people in that area, maybe over at St. Mary's or at the library even, if they have the space for it. But when would that be?
I would say probably November
Yeah.
Yeah.
at best case, and you have to remember, we've gotten transportation bond bill money in the past, like for Worcester Street, we got an appropriation, a nice check, a whole big ceremony, but nothing got borrowed for the project, so we had a nice soundbite for a check with $750,000 that was never borrowed by the state to give us the money. So there's a little departure from what the legislative process is to what the bureaucratic process is. So even if it was to get in and get approved, you may not get the money ever, or you might be waiting 3 years for it.
Right.
So I just caution people not to,
Right, if it's in the transportation bond bill, it's not a guarantee.
Right.
But what I will add to that is that, when Mass DOT looks at things and when they have the ability of leveraging the federal funds to help with some limited state funds, you're more likely to get
Yeah.
that released. Not a guarantee, but it's also, it's a better chance of having that happen.
So just so I'm understanding, the Chrissy grant is really in support of that siding over along Westboro Road. The second piece, which I don't think we've made a motion yet, would be in conjunction in support of a joint transportation bill that we would consider. But to your point, what's the timing on that? And they start the process on the 14th, but we don't have to have a letter of support before.
no, I think the first step is to do this letter of support for the Chrissy grant, and then. we-
No, I was asking about the second piece on the joint
Yeah,
transportation.
I think you're waiting, if you wanna, kind of take the temperature of the neighborhood down there, wait until that.
I think we should.
Yeah, I still think we can ask for transportation bond bill money to synchronize the lights and do, synchronized lights that are, 21st century technology versus electromechanical.
Right.
Regardless of the quiet zone, those lights, if anybody goes through Bridge Street, they know that that's a horrible loop detector.
Haven't
the
we
next
done
one.
that already?
No, you haven't.
Oh,
All
I
you've
thought-
done, you've done the study and then you've synchronized the clocks to get
Oh,
them to go
okay.
through. But if people don't hit that, there's a window, not to give you the traffic study that they gave me. If you don't hit that loop detector in a certain time frame, it doesn't register and yields back that time to the north and southbound traffic until it loops back to say, oh, there is a car there, and
Okay.
then gives that traffic the right time. So
You
if
got
you send
two
me a
different
text and don't roll forward,
I've had to
it
back
never
over.
goes off,
Yeah. You got two different technologies talking to each other.
Oh, okay.
barely.
Yeah, barely.
Yeah.
So would you recommend that we wait and do it all together, or send two different letters to support the transportation bond bill, one for the signaling, and then a second if we decide that a quiet zone is something we wanna move forward with?
Well, it sounds like the quiet zone too is linked to the traffic leverage, right? And you said that federal grants are typically linked to the traffic. Is that right? The transportation
We're
bond
doing the
bill?
crossing, this project
Yeah.
and this study is all paid, well, some is paid by us, but it's also paid by federal money
Right.
coming in here. So the state doesn't really put much money into these crossings. We're using federal and our own money that we have to match. But where I was saying here is for the transportation bond bill, the state putting some state money into this is more likely because they're getting something bigger out of it, and there should be some broad support for this. And this is, the other thing with this intersection is that anyone at Mass DOT is gonna look at it and they're gonna see what the problems are with this, with the three-legged intersection coming into here. I mean, they would probably prefer you make East Street dead end, but that's not feasible. So this is about as best it can be done, with the traffic patterns you have right now. But again, that's different than the Chrissy grant.
Right.
So, yeah, we've got a motion for letter of support for the Chrissy grant. Just sticking to that piece, is there any further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. On the second piece of this, concerning the transportation bond bill, we're gonna talk about scheduling at the end of the meeting, but maybe we ought to use one of our workshop meeting to go down there at a location to be determined in that neighborhood and bring this up as a discussion item.
I like
Sure.
that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, second week of November or
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Tim, you know what to write?
Yeah, in terms of the letter, we have a draft letter, we'll put a
That's
letter
right, let's stick.
for you to sign.
The draft is there. There's
Is
a
it on
letter
our
for you
list
to sign
already?
In the signature folder, yeah,
Great.
for the chair.
Let me read the letter in the record.
Yeah, look at that. There you go.
The other piece of this is, we did reach out to Jeff Walsh at Graves to find traffic engineers that can kind of counterbalance the work that they've done, just so we know that we're, it's the right thing to do, it can work. So we need to engage a traffic engineer, look at their power study, just to make sure we're, not missing something. So we'll do that as well.
So if you just pardon me, I just want to read the letter that we authorized the chair to sign into the record. This is in regards to the Federal Railroad Administration, Les Renzo, Regional Administrator, 55 Broadway, room 1076, Cambridge, Mass. 02142, regarding Grafton Upton Railroad Chrissy grant application for re-installation of siding interchange on Worcester Main Line and upgrading Grafton Upton's main line to Class 2 115-pound rail in 9 crossings, estimated to cost $10 million. Dear Administrator Forenzo, at a publicized Board of Selectmen's meeting on October 1st, 2019, the members voted unanimously to support the Grafton Upton's Federal Railroad Administration's Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements, CRISI, grant that will be submitted this month in partnership with Mass, DOT, and MBTA. This public-private partnership will provide many benefits to the region, the town of Grafton, including improving safety and reducing noise impacts to the neighborhood around the GU rail yard and interchange. With favorable support from FRA, this CRISI grant will increase interchange operational efficiency, reduce emissions, enhance safety, improve velocity and utilization of the corridor. It will provide CSX with enough track space to make a set-off directly to the Grafton Upton reinstalled interchange during daylight hours rather than interchange delivery and associated noise impacts at 1 a.m. to the residents of North Grafton. CSX will be able to eliminate nearly 75 trip miles of redundant travel off the Worcester Main Line instead of continuing east to Framingham from Selkirk, as well as eliminating a minimum of 4 days of extra travel and redundant switching to multiple trains. In addition, 9 crossings will be upgraded, combined with safer and more resilient track from 85-pound rail to 115-pound. Thank you for your support for this project. Sincerely, Edward Frisbee, Chair, Grafton Select Board.
Becca, is there a way that we can reach out to the residents that, have had real concerns about this and just give them an update on
Definitely.
what we talked about and hopefully tell them we'll have a meeting soon?
I'm just going to make one addition to this. In the sentence that reads, it will provide CSX with enough track space to make a set-off directly to GU's reinstalled interchange during daylight hours rather than interchange delivery and associated noise impact at 1 a.m. to the residents of North Grafton, which substantially, negatively impacts their quality of life.
With emphasis.
Emphasis added. Okay. I'll sign the last page. If it affects the spacing, I'll just come back and,
But you can just scan it. Send it to me when you get done.
all right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one comment, is, again, your decision, your time frame, everything that needs to happen. We do have to go out and order different gates and designs for what's gonna happen. I'm gonna look at basically doing one as alternative C and one as non-alternative C, and then hopefully you'll be able to make a decision in November so we can order those. They do take several months to build. So again, I'm not putting pressure on it, I'm just saying that I can design it both ways. It's just that by doing, also, I think the other thing too with C is that, it allows for more of the federal money to go to help do the other boxes that are the old switches to more electronic stuff too, because it's gonna be more movements down here. Again, it just, timing from a construction standpoint and ordering is of concern, but if you're in November, that works.
All right.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, come on up.
Bill Hanley, Brigham Hill Road. I have a question for the railroad,
Sure.
through the chair. Could you tell us, could he tell us how the railroad, how the propane tank cars come into town? Do they come in from Milford or do they come in through the Worcester-Boston line?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we try to limit the travel on the propane cars. They come in right off the main line. They don't leave the yard. They're stuck in the yard. There is some confusion with some people because a propane car looks just like a car that's full of wax for Yankee Candle, or a car that's full of asphalt, or a car that's full of other products. They're the same round piece. But public safety knows what cars they are because they have a placard on there. But to answer your question, no, all of our propane comes directly off the main line, right into the yard. It crosses Westboro Street and it leaves crossing West Pearl Street.
Okay, one other question. I noticed up behind Cumberland Farms, you see these black tank cars? Are those the wax cars or are those the propane cars that are out there?
I can't tell you what they are, I can tell you what they're not. They're not propane.
Okay.
They could be wax, they could be several different things, but they look like propane, I
Yeah,
understand
right,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But they're not propane.
Okay.
We keep all the propane right there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on to the Board of Health. Why don't you guys come on up? Sorry for the delay. That was a good presentation, but we spent a lot of time.
Sorry, we ran over with finance.
No, that's all right.
They had some questions that we definitely couldn't answer.
All right, so Board of Health is,
Just an FYI.
the Board of Health is here to discuss town meeting warrant article number 25 to see if the town will vote to become a member of the Central Massachusetts Mosquito Control Project pursuant to MGL Chapter 252, Section 5A, and other applicable sections of said law, or to take any other action relative thereto. So, how was your meeting?
Good. They had some questions from a financial perspective, where the money's gonna magically come from. Since we were talking, about 71,000 in FY '21, potentially trying to get that earlier piece so we can get a jump start. They wanna know where that money was gonna come from. Question also came up around, does the warrant article as written only start July of 2020? And therefore, would another warrant article, or would this warrant article need to be revised to say like April to the following July? See, told you there were things
Your
we
services,
couldn't.
we're trying to work out something. If the community wants to vote to join, they're gonna vote to join. They're not gonna say April or July. It's the funding piece for that one quarter that we're trying to work out administratively ahead of time, whether it's just an invoice that's cut to us, we'll raise and appropriate that at town meeting under Article 1. Obviously, we'll have that appropriation ahead of the vote, but we're kind of assuming that people would want to do it. I don't know if anybody else has gotten other feedback, we should probably strategize on that before we decide what to talk about.
Well, I would imagine that in order to make it worthwhile, mosquito control efforts for the summer of 2020 ought to begin probably as soon as practicable, rather
March,
than wait.
April?
Yeah, we would
Right.
think April probably.
We would think
When the
April.
city of Worcester joined, it was a city council vote, which happened in May.
Right.
And they did come in at an early basis, so an invoice was generated from Boston. So service was able to begin right away. We basically, the next day, started ramping up our services for the city of Worcester, not wait for a check to come in, that kind of thing. But it is an unusual circumstance, but it has already happened once. And, I could certainly clear it with, legal in Boston as well for, more clarification. But the town does vote. There's really no limit, the time frame on it. It's just historically, the funding starts July 1, so that typically would be when full services would begin. But, we are making accommodations to, try to get things up and running earlier.
Okay, Mr. Carlson?
$1 million question. How much money you anticipate you'll need at the October town meeting if the town were to fund this to get you going through the current fiscal year?
$17,750.
Yeah, we recommended a one-quarter assessment, so we would start service in April.
Okay.
April, May, and June would be when a majority of the program would actually be available. The only two parts of the program that would not be available at that time would be ditch maintenance and beaver mitigation, because we do, there's a lot of pre-work that's done before those projects are started, and then we have to secure landowner permission and things like that, and we're typically not doing that service that time of year anyway. That starts about this time of year, October.
Okay. I guess for people who don't know, has the Board of Health taken a position on recommendations to join the CMMRC?
We were unanimous with trying to move forward with it again. This will probably be about the fourth time in my memory that we've tried, and I think everyone figured it's the right thing in the right time, obviously, given the EEE emergency that we're all dealing with in the state and in New England, since we just heard there's a third death in Connecticut. 3 out of 4 people in Connecticut who've gotten it have passed away at this point. So it's the right time to bring it back for the town's safety.
For those people who may be watching at home or even in the audience, who see this organization or this undertaking largely as about spraying, what are we going to say to those people?
So, as in the past, and I think we need to stress it again, like we have in past times with this that I've been involved, spraying is the last resort. It's not that they're going to be out there spraying day in and day out. It's the education, it's the tire pickup, it's the teaching folks what to do, what not to do, don't leave standing water, the larviciding, all of that, the testing, the surveillance. We don't have that luxury at this point other than the larviciding briquettes we do annually per DPW that we purchase. We don't have that early warning system. We just were blessed that the state jumped in, did the spraying twice, and did testing. And that's how we found out more mosquitoes actually tested positive, not just the human case in town. We don't have that normally, so we don't have that early warning system.
Okay.
There are 2 information sessions scheduled that Tim's gonna present on the 16th, correct, on a Wednesday?
Yeah, one in the afternoon and one in the evening.
Where are those located?
Pretty sure Nancy had secured this room.
Okay.
2 o'clock and 7.
And I would envision we'd want to put it on the Board of Health website, update maybe the red banner that we have going on the regular website, put it on the town Facebook page, put something in the Grafton News.
Yeah.
Sure. It's, I'm sorry, Wednesday the what?
16.
October 16th,
Sorry.
2 p.m. and
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Okay.
We could, beyond the pamphlets that we have, we could, work to print up new pamphlets. We could see if the MRC could put something on their Facebook page for
Sure.
educational purposes.
Sure. Well, I think, unfortunately, there's no one good way to do it these days. There's just,
Yeah.
it's so diffuse. There's a million different ways. But sure, I think the town Facebook page, any social media we have access to, will do that. We want to get people as educated as possible. It seems to me that, for people who are against spraying, and I understand the concern about other insects, I really do. The best way to avoid the state coming in and doing something that we have no control over is to mitigate the mosquito condition to the extent that we possibly can within our own control without using spraying, right? Because the state's going to do what the state's going to do at the last minute, regardless of the effectiveness. So, if you have concerns about bees, for instance, and I appreciate those concerns, you want to get out ahead of the problem and mitigate to the extent possible. But definitely, if people have questions, please come to the October 16th meetings.
Because I will say, in the past, we've had pretty much 0 attendance when we've had the previous sessions. Of course, we also weren't in a triple E type of situation that we're in currently. I will also say, and I know Governor Baker, last week sometime I read an article, I think it was in the Telegram, that he's highly concerned, obviously, with how this has been going and how it's spreading across the state. And he stated, and this is me not having it in front of me right now, pretty much that the state needs to work with towns and cities that haven't been part of mosquito control and get them to be part of mosquito control. Didn't elaborate on what that meant.
Right.
But obviously he's concerned, as everyone at the state is, that there are people out there like our town that don't have the testing, the surveillance, the trying to prevent it from becoming what we're at right now.
Okay.
Well, hopefully he'll provide a funding source. and
That's what we
should
were
be-
hopeful for about it,
Right.
that statement. We're like, if he's gonna
Yeah.
try to push to get everyone to do
Yeah.
this, send
So
the
we
money.
should make sure to talk to our representatives. and-
Start with
Push for it.
$18,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That'd be a good
That'd be a good
Right.
push.
That's a good one.
Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
Thanks for
support.
coming and updating us.
And we have a meeting next Monday, and we're gonna discuss a few of these things and get back to the finance committee before their Tuesday meeting to see if they will recommend this as
And-
well.
Okay.
Probably part of Thursday, you'll probably be
Yeah,
able
we're
to
meeting with them Thursday.
answer a
Yeah,
lot of the
answer their
questions they had around, like, because I know one of the questions around, like, the warrant, besides where's the money coming from, et cetera, since they said there's none. Pretty much, does a warrant article that's currently written, even though there's technically no date in it, would there somehow need to be a revised warrant article to clarify that we'd want to say start in April potentially? And of course, we didn't know how to answer that,
Yeah,
obviously.
no, the article wouldn't be rewritten. The motion might be modified, but I don't even think it's necessary to modify it.
And then the other question was about the commitment. If we did agree, does it have to be the 3-year commitment or?
I mean, it does not. I mean, operationally, you know, obviously we'd like to have the communities come in and stay as long as possible, but it's gonna take us time to, even though Grafton was a member, it's, you know, well over several decades now. You know, to get a lot of this, the wetlands surveyed and, ditches monitored, trap sites, et cetera. So, no, it does not necessarily have to be part of the article, and to be frank with you, we had a community several years ago that had, a fall town meeting to join for a 3-year period, and at the next spring town meeting, they had some serious issues with schools funding. They dropped out. It was not, you know, we didn't have any recourse, and not that I would have gone after them anyway for that. You know, we certainly can understand it, but.
Okay.
Well, that was one of the questions the finance committee had.
Sure.
So if we're joining for this, you know, the next fiscal year at $71,000, they need to think about it for the next few years after that.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Have a great night. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Mr. Carlson,
I motion that we appoint Cindy Ide to the Grafton Cultural Council.
motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Cindy. All right, we don't have any appointments from the TA. New business, right of first refusal, 41 Flint Pond Drive, North Grafton.
So there was a letter in your packet from the Affordable Housing Trust, that I think Joe secured for us, and their standard operation procedure and recommendation is not to exercise for units that can't be sold for the non-market rate.
Right. Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to not exercise its right to purchase the affordable unit located at 41 Flint Pond Drive, North Grafton, Massachusetts.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Vote to allow chairman to sign letter of award for Route 30 sewer project.
On September 19th, we had 3 bids for the construction of the sewer extension project on Route 30. Lowest bid was Polito and Sons Incorporated of Shrewsbury. That was a base plus 2 alternates, and total bid was for $545,005. The bid sheets were provided, and Paul's here. The timeline from notice to award to completion is 90 days, so we'd like to have this done before January 1st. I don't know if there's any other particulars that Paul wants to add.
If there's any questions, that's why I'm here. That I love meetings.
Favorite part of your
I'm
job.
just gonna put it right over here. This is where Paul's gonna sit, right? I do have a question, Paul. So we want to get this job done on or before January 1st?
Yes.
And we're gonna open a road up during the winter time?
The contract, once everything's signed between them, us, CDM, they have 90 days to complete.
Okay.
So they indicated to us at the bid opening they want to start right away while it's still dry because it's a wet area and it saves them pumping and dewatering and everything else. So their goal was pretty
1,600
quick.
feet, I mean, that'll go quick.
Yeah, and based on the previous contractor who did the private work, who we're partnering with through this whole ordeal, is, you know, they moved pretty fast. So
All right, and this is gonna be a one-lane road while they're doing this work?
yes.
Okay.
There could be some detours, all right?
Yeah, I mean, ideally they'd like the detour, but, you know, they'll have to work, you know, we'll have to do the pre-con meeting like we do for every other project.
Okay.
Police chief will give his opinion and,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to authorize the chairman to sign the letter of award to J.A. Polito and Sons Incorporated for the Westboro Road Route 30 sewer extension project in the amount of $545,005.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just have another quick question. So this is projects being paid for by the MassWorks grant, correct?
correct, the grant was for 575, the bids with alt 1 and 2 is 545, so.
Okay, great. Just wanted to double check.
It's not too often you get a check in 1 year and spend it within 12 months.
That's right. So maybe they'll give us some more.
And we would have been quicker, except we were waiting for the private
Another
developer to
contractor.
get
We had to
this,
coordinate 3 different projects.
Right.
at the same time, so.
No, I understand. But that's awesome that we got the grant and that the work's gonna be done.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Vote to sign library construction contract with CTA Construction, Andy DeShanes.
I'm not even gonna set you up for this, you're on your own.
Ken, come on, we're a team here. So I think this is a pretty easy one. This is the general contracting bid that came in. They were the low bidder. It came in roughly $1.8 million under budget. We're just asking to move forward with the contract. I actually did talk to them today. They apologized for not getting the signed contract for you tonight. So I think, Tim, we're not asking for you to sign the contract tonight. We want to do this in the right order. We want to get the contract with their signature on it first.
Okay.
And then have you sign it at your leisure after that. So I'm expecting to get the signed contract in the next couple of days.
You will still vote to sign.
But we want to
Okay.
vote to
Okay,
sign it.
we'll just sign it
and then-
later after.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just want to do it in the right order.
Okay,
Yeah, the notice to avoid's been done.
that's fine. Okay, Peter?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to sign the contract with CTA Construction Managers LLC for the construction of the expansion and renovations to the Grafton Public Library in the amount of $10,887,731.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
All right, thanks.
that's easy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay. Next, one-day beer and wine license, Tufts Cummings School for Veterinary Medicine Business Symposium.
Gene, you here for that?
This is, if I may, this is a request for a one-day beer and wine license for a Veterinary Business Management Association symposium, which would be held on Sunday, October 27th, from noon to 4 p.m. It is open to the Cummings community, including Cummings alumni, and it really is to help students and others network and understand the practice of running a veterinary clinic and veterinary businesses.
Okay.
There will be certified bartender and a police detail there.
All right. Any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
I vote that the board approve a one-day beer and wine license for Tufts Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine for October 27, 2019 at 200 Westboro Road, North Grafton.
Motion made, do I hear a second? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Enjoy,
you very
thank you.
much.
Thanks.
Okay, next, one-day beer and wine license, Roney Park Cornhole Tournament fundraiser, Nelson Park, October 6, 2019, 11 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Timothy O'Toole, and I'm here to seek the board's approval for a one-day beer license for a cornhole tournament being held October 6th, this Sunday coming up from 11:30 till approximately 3:30.
Okay.
It's a scholarship. The proceeds will be going to a scholarship fund for Stephen Roney.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
I vote that the board approve a one-day beer and wine license for Timothy J. O'Toole on October 6, 2019 for Nelson Park, North Grafton, Massachusetts.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Just one quick, you guys gonna be tip certified?
Yes, I am tip certified.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. Oh, sorry.
I believe you have a copy of that.
Yep.
Yeah, my
Thank
printer
you.
stopped working.
No,
right-
that's
Right
okay.
at this application, so sorry about that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Have a good night.
Yeah. Take care, Tim.
Let's use my phone for the rest of the packet. Okay, one-day beer and wine license, Grafton Land Trust annual meeting. Anyone?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
move the board vote to authorize a one-day beer and wine license for the Grafton Land Trust annual meeting to be held on November 1st, 2019 at 1 Grafton Common in the Great Hall.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then our last one, one-day beer and wine and music license. Community Harvest Project's annual Harvest Home Festival and 5K race, November 3rd, 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hi.
Hi, I'm Mary Hope Gardner here on behalf of Community Harvest Project, applying for a one-day beer and wine permit and a music license. Harvest Home is our fall festival, our largest fundraiser of the fall season, and all proceeds go towards hunger relief. we do have our tip certification already in, and then I have a copy of our updated insurance for liquor liability.
Okay, saw that. Mr. Janelle? Yes.
I move the board vote to authorize a one-day beer and wine and music license for the Community Harvest Project's annual Harvest Home Festival and 5K race on November 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Where does the 5K road race go around?
So it goes, I haven't walked the trail yet. It goes through Land Trust land and the Williams Preserve, and then up back towards our driveway. So 37 Real Road
I
goes
could
all the
get in
way
shape for
around.
that. I could do that. I can do this. I can do this. Okay.
See you there.
You're great. All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Been looking for a thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, select board TA reports. Tim, you want to go?
Sure. I just have a few things to update the board on. Wednesday, tomorrow, Nature's Remedy will hold their outreach meeting for their grow facility here in Conference Room A at 6:30. Both Resonate and MJ Market both filed with Planning Board. We learned that from Joe Layden today at a meeting we had with him. I have a question for the board relative to executive session. Ginny Kramer needs to talk to the board about two items. One's the opioid litigation, and the other one is, what's the second one? There's two matters. I'm wondering if we can do it before town meeting.
Yeah, let's do that.
Is that all right with everyone?
That's
All right,
fine.
so
Edison.
we'll start it up.
Sun Edison. Yeah.
Sun Edison,
That's
okay.
the other one.
So good, we'll do that for town meeting. Tango, you did a contract with them for the LED lights, kickoff meetings tomorrow to start with the replacement for the LED lights. We are attending Finance Committee on Thursday relative to the motions that we prepared, which we don't have for you tonight, but we'll send out probably tomorrow, just so you have them ahead of time. Not a lot of adjustments, but if you read through them, they're simple to read in terms of the detail behind the transfers and the reasons why they're happening, and every other piece relative to the other 29 or 30 articles. We are meeting with them on Thursday. You talked about the Harvest Festival November 3rd, so I won't cover that. Rebecca received a scholarship, potential made possible scholarship from the League of Women in Government, which covers the cost to attend an ICMA conference. So there's no cost to the town. ICMA is the International City Managers Association, which will be held in Tennessee, Memphis? Nashville? I'd rather go to Nashville. I won't be going because town meeting will be happening then, but Becca will go and get a lot of good information and learn a lot of stuff. And was it like 3 people were selected nationally to get the grant? 4. So it's pretty good.
Congratulations.
So,
Becca.
one, we don't have to pay for it. 2, we have a great community leader that's going to a great conference that she'll, I don't know, they're just unbelievable events. So a lot of learning opportunities. So we acknowledge her, and we'll miss her for town meeting, but I think we'll be all right.
Who's gonna do the clickers, Becca? Who's gonna be in charge of that?
Sorry, I got someone.
We're working on that.
Yeah.
We might have to go back to hand raising.
No, we won't, don't say that.
Just want to prepare people now. And next week, Becca and I are attending a 5th grade class. I think there's 4 classes that we're going to go speak to local government about because they're trying to get civics back into the social studies realm inside of curriculum. So we're going to go and talk about local government. So we did it last year. We didn't have the 4 classroom gauntlet, but we will do that this year.
It'll be a gauntlet.
And tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to meet with Jay. We have an earmark that the legislative delegation secured for us and we talked about this before, but finally we're going to get Jay in a room and we're going to figure out the internship program for high school students, and we're going to talk about his fiscal 21 request or need for the budget coming up. And that's all I have for you this evening, other than the projection piece when we get to discussions.
Okay. Anyone else for TA report or select board reports?
I have a couple things, unless you want,
Nope,
did you
I'm
want to
good.
first?
Thank you.
Okay, one thing that's interesting, Laura just stepped into the room. I did want to talk about, I spoke at our last meeting. I had mentioned that a cost of a project cost $100,000 for the school, the new buses. And I just want to say, I got that number off a site circulation study. It said based on preliminary estimates, the cost to design and construct the improvement is approximately $100,000. And, but I was corrected, so I just wanna correct the record, it's 14 grand. So I have that. And then, I have stuff, to talk to our chair about and everybody here. It was pointed out to me that yet again, you're using social media to talk about things that the select board does. And I'd like to discuss it because I don't feel like as a board, we should use social media to take digs at other members of our board.
Like what?
Well, lots of things. So you blogged about some things that happened, your opinion, and I'll just for the good of the town, we're supposed to be a team, and I think we should work together, and we shouldn't talk about other people online. So if you have something to say to me, you should say it in a meeting. So first of all, you mentioned that I started the meeting when you were 3 minutes late. Yes, our meetings start at 7. Anybody here, the same thing would happen. Our meetings start at 7. You're late on a consistent basis. I have no way to know if you're going to be 3 minutes late or 20 minutes late. Okay, number 2. I agree, we all miss meetings. It's fine. We all miss meetings, and the business should go on as scheduled. But what I disagree with is the meeting in which you put up the host agreement was put on an agenda specifically because I was not there. And that is the difference.
Okay, well, if I can address this in turn.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, great. I'd like to have a conversation instead of you doing it online.
This is now, we're 2 months into this with this community host agreement. It's getting a little bit over the top. For me personally, I mean, that's just my point of view, and I think that people in the community generally agree. We're sort of stuck on this. And I sense that we could go back and forth all night on this particular thing. I didn't put this on an agenda. I didn't know you're out of town. I really didn't. I don't care one way or the other. I mean, you're me. You're the vice chair of this board. Your chair announces 24 hours before coming into a meeting to talk about a community host agreement that this is what he's going to do. Not only as someone who's a personal or representative of the community, but as a friend, to be honest with you. It put me in an incredibly difficult spot. Just an incredibly difficult spot. In all candor. And, you know, I heard that he had talked to ethics and they gave him the okay. And from my point of view, and I'll say this again, I've said it before, to the extent we start treating people differently than we treat anybody else with applications for this sort of thing, with the limited amount of guidance that we've received from the CCC on this, all we have is Section 94G. That's all we've got. We got that memo that I read out loud at the meeting. We go forward as we should, and we raised the question, well, you know, was it really a majority vote? Well, then we had to go get an opinion. And we got an opinion from Mark, what's Mark's last name?
Terry.
Mark Terry. Mark Terry backed us up. And because I had consistently heard from members of the community that, well, we heard that vote wasn't binding, I felt the need to address it. And I'm sorry if you don't like that I use social media, but I'm going to continue to use social media.
Okay, and every time you do, we are going to also talk about it in this room.
That's fine.
If you mention the select board.
Oh, that's fine. We'll have many, many conversations.
Yes, as long as we will. And just you said something there. The reason I'm bringing it up isn't that I'm not over it. You're the one that blogged about it, not me.
I felt the need to correct the record publicly.
Well, and I feel the need to correct the record too. That was on the agenda. The chairman at the time put it on the agenda. He knew 4 weeks in advance that I was not going to be there.
Okay.
And I know that's not you.
Yeah.
But when you say we follow the correct procedure, every other host agreement we have ever done.
See, that is
Yes.
that is a blatant falsehood.
It is not.
When these people have come in, we've done this. We have an unusual process that we went through with 3 other people or 3 other applicants, and those people came in and they have these little meet and greet sessions that they come in and they do this cute thing where they say, well, we're not really sure if we're going to go forward with this, but we want to introduce ourselves to you. They do the entire presentation.
Correct.
Okay, and all of us sat there. We did the one with MAI/Resonate. Craig wasn't even here on that one. Sargon recused himself. So there are 3 people sitting up here. And when that guy came in, he asked us questions. We all said, great, fine, fantastic, sounds wonderful. We didn't take a formal vote on that one, but then he came back later. He got the formal vote, and everybody said yes because he's already done his presentation. And on that, I might remind you,
He came twice, so if there were people from the public that had questions, they could ask us those questions.
right?
in
Except
between.
it wasn't advertised. Except it was not advertised.
on our
It wasn't
agenda.
advertised like that.
on
Okay.
our
Chair,
And
point of order. I want a point of order right now. Look, it sounds to me that the point of having select board reports, if there's something specific that you want to bring up in select board reports, please just add it to the agenda items. And I agree with you. If there's something
Yeah.
Jen or Ed or myself or Doreen or whoever's going to be the 5th member, if they want to add that, please put it on. Otherwise, we're utilizing a part of our agenda that's designed to just give up reports on maybe subcommittees that we're on, saying that we met and we're going to be taking actions. And right now, I don't see any action item that this discussion is going to be taking other than, with all due respect, is an argument going back and forth about a situation that occurred a couple of months ago, right or wrong.
Yeah.
I suggest, Mr. Chair and the board, that we table this discussion, and if it is to something to be put on a future agenda, put it on the agenda and put in what is the action that this board needs to take as a result of that discussion.
yeah, if we want to have an action item in the future to come up with some bylaws about how we want to treat recreational marijuana applicants, then that's perfectly fine.
No, I'd be all set for that.
Yeah.
And again, my point in bringing it up tonight was not the actual process of the host agreement, except to correct what you had said online, because that is your opinion, your side of the story, and you prefer to get your information out that way. But every time you put it out there, we're also going to talk about it in here.
Well, next time put it on an agenda. What else you got? Anything?
I do, actually, because we're supposed to be leaders of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that, there's a great responsibility. And when you mock me on social media, that is not good leadership. I have 3 children. I know you have 3 children too.
Mm-hmm.
Mine are on social media. So think
Who's
about,
I'm not mocking you.
you did. You did.
With what?
You posted something on Facebook mocking me.
With what?
Ed, it's not the time or the place to go into it. But instead of making fun of people online, come talk to me in person.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's enough. I think as a
I'm
leader of this
asking you
community-
if you have anything else you want to say.
Yeah, your tone.
Mr.
Your,
I do have some reports I want to get
Yeah.
on board before
Mr.
the end of the
Carlson, go
night.
ahead.
I apologize while they're still in my head. I just want to remind everyone that, a couple of months ago, we set up the Fire Staffing Study Committee. We're making some really good progress with the report about the recommendation that we're going to bring forward, hopefully soon. I know our charge goes to the end of the year. Last night, we feel that we're ready to start having some public input sessions and at least starting to disclose what we've uncovered thus far. So the tentative date for that public discussion is October 21st. I'm charged with reaching out to the Cable Access TV studio in Cindy about securing a room. That would be a Monday. If that date doesn't work, it would be then November 4th, that Monday.
Yeah, it's town meeting, so.
That's
Yeah, town meeting.
Probably
So
won't
it
pick
probably
up.
won't
You know
be that
something?
day.
There was something about that night, and Jen was there. I was like, that doesn't
You're
work.
like,
But
I
I
have
wrote.
something to do.
Pete's not gonna be at the meeting.
Whoa!
I
I
left
said
when the logistics started. Once you guys started talking about logistics, I was out.
you missed a good part. I said, can we get an alternate date? And they were like, what do you mean? I said, can we go to November 4th? Because I'm like, I think we have something that day. Anyway, it will be then November 4th for that meeting.
Okay.
All right. See, that's why we have backup
That's good.
plans.
You have an extra time to advertise.
So we will, thank you, Jen. We will be advertising that meeting. And again, it's just for the public to participate, give input. We'll be soliciting ideas. Maybe someone's got a better idea about the items that report had outlined for the town to consider. In addition to that, just I think we talked about at the last meeting, the CIPC bylaw. They had their public hearing tonight. I obviously couldn't make it to that. But I understand there's a conflict, and I will be attending as a part of that committee to CPC to perhaps answer any questions that they may have about, I guess, process. So that will be this Thursday at 7 p.m. So
In this room.
in this room. So that's all I have.
All right. Doreen?
Nope, I don't have anything.
All right, and just from me, the GSC met a couple weeks ago, and we're into the benchmarking phase. We've divided up our work between the 9 members along the municipal benchmarking and the state education benchmarking. We've used the benchmarking communities that were identified through the DOR for the municipal side, and we came up with another slightly longer formula for how we're identifying towns for the state education side. But we're identifying the towns that are similar to us for,
Municipal.
now it's, foundation funding.
Oh, okay.
So that work has begun. We were going to meet on Thursday, but I have a conflict with that, so I have to reschedule that meeting. I will put it online to let people know when that's going to be next. And that's it for me. Correspondence, we do have the correspondence from Laura Often. We've addressed it, so, okay.
I do have a couple more. So through our town webpage, we received a letter from Jim Pezzamenti. I would like to read his letter. It
Sure.
says, I'd like to make the board aware of 4 large dead oak trees on Nelson Trust land in close proximity to my property at 10 Matthew Circle. Attached is a letter providing more details on the matter, as well as photos of the trees. Note that I'm willing to pay for the removal of the trees, but just wanted to give the board the courtesy of this notification prior to their actual removal. Thank you, Jim Pezzamiti. And then a follow-up email came right after that, and he states, this is a continuation of the previous message sent to include additional photos of attachment. Note that in all of the attached photos, the trees in question are marked with bright green ribbon. Thanks, Jim Pezzamiti. And obviously, from Ms. Often, I understand, Jen, you stand corrected, but we did receive a letter from the Grafton School Committee Chair outlining just the clarification of the school department capital project to fix the traffic safety issues at the high school, and obviously updated the expenses, and we've made that announcement tonight. And that is all I have for correspondence, unless did anyone else receive something that I may have missed?
No, just obviously, Rich Whitney had sent me, and he does this frequently, Facebook messages.
Okay.
So sometimes, the vagaries of the notification system, sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes, something pops up on my phone while I'm driving and, I don't have time to get back to it. So I apologize to Richard for not getting back to that particular one, but, again, we all get a lot of correspondence. If anybody reaches out to us, and you don't hear back immediately, reach out again. That's just the best approach. We're not ignoring you. Chances are we just haven't gotten around to it. So, next up, discussion FY21 projections. So we haven't gone over these yet this year. We talked a little bit about it last month, and we weren't in a position to say anything. I know that since we have gotten free cash certified.
Yes.
And do we have an idea of what we're going to be looking at for this coming FY21?
Yeah, no budgets have been submitted yet. I'll just, I'm giving you a 30,000 foot view relative to 21 and beyond. But when we ask people to prepare budgets on the municipal side, we ask for revenue too. Don't just hit me with the expenses. So we've had modest growth throughout the years. We've going to try to curtail wherever we can. So when we talk about general numbers, just know that it's in general from a growth perspective overall, not just the police department's asking for $60,000 more, or somebody's asking for $100,000 more. We don't have any of that information. We don't have the school department's request. We know some fixed costs, which I'll run through. But I thought it was important to preface this with, we don't have detailed requests for budgets, those aren't due until November. But we do ask for people, if they see ways of enhancing revenue, to put those in their budget narrative as well. So if they have a program that costs money and they want to pay for it, general fund dollars or other dollars, they need to articulate that in the budget submittal. But I think first I want to start off with the year-to-date revenues and expenses, just to give us a snapshot of where we are and how well I think we're doing relative to collection, for example. So we have major revenue categories on the left. They're not every category, but they are 90% of the money this town takes in. Real estate, personal property, building permit, state aid, motor vehicle, police services. So this is a 5% fee that we charge to developers or whoever needs traffic enforcement or detail work done administrative fees are in this 20,000. It's a small number. The beach stickers I made Becca put in because we estimate in 20 we collect 28. Year to date, it's 17 for 20. So we'll start selling again in April, May. When I look at that number compared to their operating budget, they have a lot more revenue than that. They have 200,000 to 300,000 in revenue, but just beach stickers alone, it's just an incredible number, and they're offsetting and minimizing the impact to the general fund by having those fees.
Wow.
Or not general fund, this is a general fund fee, I should say, to the property tax payer, right? So the general taxes aren't used for those types of things.
They sell that many beach stickers?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a lot. It's a small beach.
Yeah.
Imagine if we built the garage. No, I'm not proposing.
So it's more just like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more revenue that comes in.
Yeah, no, I know that.
But
that
that's
is
just one
interesting.
piece that
Yeah.
I just wanted to extract out and show the board. The page of throw bags, 510. That budget's just a hair under $1 million,
$950.
something like that.
It's
So
right down
between
there,
the
Joshua said.
paying for the bags, the transportation at Harvey, and the burn at Wheelabrator, you're covering half of the cost, which is. You want to cover the whole cost, you got to go to $19 a roll, but you're not going to do that right now. So, but I'm just giving you an illustrative example of these programs that we're trying to become sustainable. And I won't go down this whole thing because you know this stuff, from the Health Alliance to veterans
Animal control.
to animal control. Those shared models of shared services with other communities, we've done it in every place we could do it. You know, short of assessing, that might be the only next logical place, but we'll talk about the assessing department, how great having the setup we have with the 3 people we have and the board is, because that's going to relate back to what we're doing at town meeting, but we'll get to that in a second. Major expense categories for 20, year to date, and then 21, the estimate. MIS, GIS, it's everything from desktop computers to servers in the server room to Microsoft 365 licensing, and then the day-to-day operations for the consultant, which I think is, what does Coughlin cost us out of that 138?
42.
So when your group looks at costs from other communities, it's tough because we did this. We surveyed other communities to see how thin or how fat we were in every department. How many
Right.
people are in there? What's the budget for personnel? What's the budget for expense? So we've done all that. We have all that. We don't have it for you tonight, but we have it all. But we started to think, well, how do they deal with MIS? Because I know the town of Oxford, for example, has a very robust plan for IT, and they had a budget at one point of over $300,000 in Oxford for IT. I don't manage that community. I don't know what it was for, but that's kind of disparity between them and us. Municipal center, this is mostly staff related. There's 2.5, 3 people really that manage this building. All of electric utilities are in this line item, so it can show what that number is now and what it's projected to grow at. Health insurance, we are adding $75,000 at town meeting under Article 1. So that brings that budget up over 5.1 million. That's
Is that for new hires?
Retirees. We don't have any new hires right now, and again, nobody's given me a proposal for a budget, but pretty much no one on the municipal side is gonna ask for it.
It's the HRA and deductible
Yeah,
reimbursement.
so
I see.
it does not include that for those 75. But there could be enrollments because we only have 30% of the eligible population enrolled in our plans. So if they have a qualifying event and they come on, I don't budget for those extra lives, so I have to wait until October or May to add those numbers in.
I know for my office, every year we come up with, are we switching health insurance plans? Are we sticking with the one that we have? When does that happen for you guys?
We just did it. We just joined
We just got renewal.
Harvard Pilgrim. We left the GIC. We'll start to talk renewals because we have an estimated renewal of about 6%. So that'll start happening now, and if the renewals look good, we'll just stay status quo.
Okay.
It was difficult for us to shop for a new vendor with the GIC because they would not release data claims information, so they didn't know what the loss runs were. So now we'll have a better place with Harvard Pilgrim if we were to shop it. But there are vendors like Blue Cross that wouldn't even quote us 2 years ago when we tried to leave the GIC.
Right, I think I remember that being the issue, is we only really had the one.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question going back on the group health insurance? So you only fund about 30% of the total liability on the town employee side that could possibly utilize it? Because not 100%, you don't have 100% participation. So you don't budget 100% participation. So what percentage do you budget for the liability of insurance?
We budget for the people who are in it
Who are
right now.
currently enrolled, which I think is 30, you said 30%?
I said 30, it could be 30-40% in
I think
terms
it's
of
a little higher than that.
participation.
That's town and school.
Yeah, right. So
Combined.
let's say
we
it's,
budget for the people that are enrolled.
all right.
And that's what it costs for us to cover 35% of eligible.
But that's what you use as a primer for year after year, what you budget for health insurance. But like to your point, if it goes sideways and you get, let's say, 100 people who enroll, which could possibly happen.
Could happen.
You typically will fund that sometime in the
October or May, if we know that budget's running.
in the deficit.
sideways.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Thank you.
And it could be a killer. I mean,
Yeah,
really, if
yeah.
we do not, unfortunately, have a robust health program, people don't typically join because it's expensive and it's not robust. So people don't join. They go with their family plans for their spouses. So
And we know the increase is 6%?
that's what they're estimating
Okay,
right now
okay.
for an increase.
I think we're carrying 6.5.
Yeah, that one looks a little higher than 6.
So 0.5 would be for the lives, if the school were to add, or new, add a qualifying event or whatever. They have so many, with 550 employees in the school department, they have more variation. So we have a little bit of buffer in there, but even 0.5% is not enough. Town insurance, this is covering all your vehicles, general liability, public officials liability, school officials liability, all of your buildings. I forget what the hundreds of millions of dollars of value is for all the buildings, but that's what's covered in there through the Maya program. We work hard to get people into training, workers' comp, all that stuff is included in this number. If we can get money back, and we do get money back consistently through either grants or other incentives with training employees on proper lifting techniques or whatever classes they go to, from OSHA to municipal finance. We submit everything and they shake it up and they give us a discount. So then we can use those discounts for, if we take a cheap vehicle off and put a more expensive vehicle on, we can use that to pay the cost for that. So, I don't know, probably 25,000 in the mix there annually we train people and we get credits. I think that's what
Credits, yeah.
the trend is.
Roughly.
Early pay discount for that, if we pay it up front, just like retirement, we do get a discount for paying it all at one lump sum, so we take advantage of that. Trash and recycling, again, it goes back to the pay as you throw, it's a $9.50. The reason why it looks low through August is there's probably either a non-bill that was processed for Wheelabrator or E.L. Harvey. But either way, we're on pace for a 960 for 2020.
And how long's the contract before Harvey's up again? Do you know?
We just did them with, I think, 5 years with 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. I do not know the exact date.
I think it's 2026.
Wow.
Oof, okay.
Wow. Okay. Because that number hasn't really risen a lot for the past decade.
No,
You know,
we
that's been
cut it.
really
When we started working together, that was over $1 million.
Yes.
We got it down to like the 7s, and then it's creeped back up just
Yeah,
for inflation.
but it's still under $1 million, which it's a good number.
So, yeah, it's a lot of money. But
Yeah, it's a lot of money,
it's
but it could be a
manageable.
lot worse. Yeah.
So not to minimize our position and what we do for work every day, but we try to just manage inside this box of real estate for revenue, make sure that the collections are over the 98%. Obviously, we get full credit from DOR for the full amount that's committed, but we are collecting. So you might have a question about the personal property. People, they're broken into 4 quarters. If they pay all 4 quarters up front for tax purposes, that's why it says 124%.
Right.
So it might confuse people, but that's why. Motor vehicle, the big commitment goes out. You see the 2.8 million that we're carrying. I think it's $35 per thousand for a motor vehicle. The 2.8 million is conservative. We always meet the number by $50,000, $60,000.
Okay.
but you can never really, pin it down. But February is when the big commitment goes out. That's why, you only have 212 in terms of collected money so far year to date. So it's kind of a snapshot of where we're at, all of the budgets, and I know I've showed this to you before, but just to give the community some faith in us too. We have these management reports that go out to staff every month, and they look at their particular line items that were allocated at town meeting to make sure they're in line with, 1/12 budgeting, whatever the percentages are, if it's 33% after a quarter. They look at that and they can see where lines don't match up, maybe something got assigned to a wrong account. We wanna fix those things, 'cause it's fresh in our mind, and not wait until May, and then town meeting and accounting has to do a big, forensic accounting, if you will, to figure out where those, dollars and cents might have been misallocated to line items inside a budget. So we have that protocol in place to track those as we go every month. So it's a good feature to have. Yeah.
Tim, I'm stuck on group health insurance right now. You said in October, are we gonna go to October town meeting, and do you anticipate any transfers into that account to?
$75,000.
So $75,000, okay. And if you back that out, you said you're carrying approximately 6.1% for next year?
6.5.
We're not backing it out. You add the 75 to the 4.7, and then you increase that by 6.5%, and you get 5.1.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the 75, the exposure right now for the HRA deductible reimbursement is about 95,000, but NFP has told us that not everyone will submit, not everyone will have kept their paperwork and so forth. So we think 75 is probably they've told us it's 75.
Since NFP works with a lot of other municipalities, they know what the trend is for people for reimbursement.
Some people submitted the last month too, right?
Yeah, they're due. Well, the submissions are due at the end of October, early November. So we won't even know until after town meeting. But
okay.
And the 75's probably come for free cash.
Raising appropriate. Because part of the accolades I try to bestow upon the assessor's office is the new growth will be in the 800s versus the 550 number that we carried in our budget. So it's going to give you more opportunity to raise and appropriate in October.
Okay.
So in a lot of ways, the assessors, even though the people who have to pay the bills hate them, they have saved us in so many occasions. But it's because we've been conservative with so many things too. So there's a little balance there with that. So that's this slide in a nutshell. Major revenue by category just shows. This for me has always been kind of like the guiding, not principle, but you passed the budget for 60 million last year. This year we're going to pass 62, for example. Do we want to talk about the original 60? Because we've already kind of agreed to the original 60. So I just try to look at all new money this community will have. So we looked at it from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So what's allowed under 2.5 and 21 will be 981,000. That's all 2.5 will allow on the levy. The new growth, we're carrying 550. Still, it's conservative, but we did the reval, we did some personal property stuff, we fixed some 61A land. That's why that 800,000 number is in the 20 column for new growth. I don't think we're going to see that again. So we tighten up a bit in terms of being conservative for the 550. The state aid increase. 1%. It's been about that. So
right.
We just carried that. Local receipts increase. We are in a boom. I mean, the building department's busy. Planning has things in the pipeline. There's a lot of permits in queue. We think that those numbers are realistic and attainable. There's also marijuana money in those numbers in terms of when they, it takes 3 months to grow a seed to get from seed to sale. So as long as, like I mentioned in my report, the 2 host agreements that we have, well, we have 4, but 2 of them are moving forward with planning now, not including Nature's Remedy, just doing the grow facility. So those are in those numbers.
The local receipts numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, so all new money for fiscal 21 will be $2.1 million. So that's all new money that we have. And then under this, we just took a slice, not asking, we've asked everybody what their budget submittals will be for 21. But there's things that we know that we just talked about from a previous slide, things that we know are gonna increase from major expense categories. Health insurance and I know this was important to Ed to see what the breakout was for non-union, union employees, Worcester County retirement, town insurance, municipal expenses. And we're accounting for the cherry sheet assessment for us joining the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program. That's what that 71,000 is. So we'll start at the top, health insurance, if that's a 6.5% increase, that's 391,000. So you subtract that from the 2.1, you're at 1.7. The union pay increases, this 94,000 is police, DPW, custodial staff, dispatches, and clerical. So I don't know, out of those 5 units, I'm gonna guess I'm gonna say there's less than 48 people in all those numbers, maybe 50.
I think there's more.
You think there's more?
I think it's probably mid-50s.
Yeah. But, well, actually, you gave me notes on the breakout of who is where. Now, these are, some of these are contract, so, all these for union municipalities are all contract. So the police, of that 94 are at 56, they're the lion's share of it. Dispatch is 5,200, DPW is 17,000, clerical's 14,000, and non-union, which is 37. Those are people who aren't part of a bargaining unit. That would be me, Rebecca, 2 admins in our office, town clerk, some adjustments that need to happen there. Most department heads. And we're using a range between 2 and 2.5%. So that's what makes up that number. People will get more or less depending on their evaluations. So that's what the 37,000 is. Broke out the 94. Worcester County Retirement's our best guess. We won't know that assessment until February. They meet to determine what our assessment will be. We carried a number consistent with other years. Town insurance, again, we work to get that number down through Maya, through various credits and programs that they have, but we are carrying a $50,000 increase. What is that, a $550,000 total?
I don't think it's gonna be that high. I think that's.
Well, for projection purposes, we're carrying the 50 right at this moment. They tell us it's lower, of course it'll come down. What's the big variable with town insurance is workers' comp. So if we have a lot of workers' comp claims, that throws that off.
The audit is about to happen. They're about to come in and do the audit.
And they look at your payroll to see what your number is in terms of payroll liability, and they set your rate based on your payroll. Municipal expenses, I think that's like a 1% increase. Everything in terms of utility costs are stable, because obviously we have solar, we have negotiated electric rate, we don't pay for water. So there's not a lot of growth there, but again, we want to keep up on general maintenance. General maintenance contracts for HVAC go up every year. We're anticipating they'll go up again. Again, this is not a submittal from a department asking for more money. It's just our estimate of what those things would grow based on the history. Finally, the cherry sheet assessment, the 71,000. The state gives us money, they take it away on the back side of the sheet. So we know that this will be for July 1 for Central Mass Mosquito Control. We know it's a $71,000 number, and that'll be a reduction in the amount of money we get in state aid. So that's accounted for in this, on this sheet anyways. So you can see pretty quickly, once you take all those fixed costs out, you have about $1,360,000 left. Again, without submittals from particular departments for what they want and what they're asking for in expenses and revenues, this is a very 30,000-foot view of where we're at. So the next slide this is horrible, because it has every piece of the projection on here, from revenue to expenses to non-appropriated amounts that we go through town meeting. It has the SOAR department. The bottom, in my mind, is the most important thing, is the surplus deficit for 2021 and going out. So that's what you have to look at, because the school department's the biggest number on the sheet, and I don't have their number. I did not take the liberty of adding it, because I don't know what Jay really is going to ask us for. He did tell me today, but we're gonna meet on Thursday about it, so I don't wanna mislead you. He did tell me a number, but I don't wanna put it in there and assume anything until I talk to him. So what I'm trying to do is just describe all of the revenues we have. Oh, you broke it down, all right.
I did. I broke it.
So this one here has the revenues, previous year levy, what's allowed under 2.5. If there was excess levity, it would show it. The new growth, it shows that the road stabilization, you haven't had the added 2.5% on there, but you do have the 1.5. And I just want to put one thing out there for the board to consider relative to road stabilization. Once you vote to tell the assessors to raise it, it goes on the tax bill. So if you were to lower that to $1 million, say in 1 year, that would lower the impact of the taxpayer by $500,000. So if you wanted to manage something where you needed to do an override or debt exclusion, and you wanted to lessen the burden to the taxpayer for 1 year or two, you could vote to raise less than 1.5.
Wouldn't we need a 2/3 vote at town meeting to do that, though?
No,
We could just do that?
you can do that.
Doesn't that 1.5 come from the override we passed?
It does. They authorize it to be borrowed. You would only ask them to allocate. They'll do it first in October. We're asking them for 1.5 now at town meeting now.
Yeah.
But when you vote in November to set the tax rate, you can vote to send that letter and say, we only want to raise $1 million. And then I would only be limited to what I could raise. But I don't want you to dwell on it. I just want you to know that you have, when we have bond rating calls for a library or DPW, we talked about this road stabilization account as an evergreen fund where you can reallocate and you have flexibility inside that 1.5. We want to do roads. There's no doubt about it. We want to do roads that need to be done. But the belts and suspenders strategy is this. It's chapter 90 if you needed to do other things that you couldn't put in the general fund. So you have some other backup hedges, if you will. So I just put it out. I'm not recommending it. I'm just making everyone aware that you have flexibility and options relative to road stabilization, subject to town meeting approval, but you have the authority to tell the assessors to raise that money. They appropriate a town meeting, but you guys get to tell them to raise it. So enough on that. Let me just go back one just for debt exclusion. So all the debt that we have, this is the growth. There's a little dip there in 22. Is it 22 or 21?
It's just excluded debt though, it's not all debt.
That's true. So we have debt inside the limit and outside the limit, but that's just excluded debt will drop 0.7. It's a minimal number. State aid, again, revenues, local receipts, modest growth. We took out, you took out UPS at one point? What year?
Took out UPS, period.
Completely throughout, because we just don't know when they're coming, so
And
we
we took out
decided
the
to back it
permit.
out.
Yeah, the permit fee and the new growth.
So those are out there. Originally, we were in 22, 23, but now we've just backed them out completely.
Has there been any conversation with them recently?
We reach out probably monthly to ping them. I have to say, there was an attorney who's local that helped them work the deal, Donahue. And because the assessor sent me a letter today relative to the value of that property when they did the reval this time. It was $751 when it got sold, but because it was sold and now it's prime real estate for development for commercial, that value's changed. And I just want to give them that heads up that, it went from $750,000 to $2 million. They're going to stop paying tax on that $2 million going forward. They may end up contesting it too. So that's another piece that you might want to have in the back of your mind. I don't think they do, but you could. But the Department of Revenue is telling us we're doing it right. That's a bigger piece of this with new growth being certified. It's not just us saying, oh, these condos are worth this two families worth this, your single family's worth that. It's all sent back to the Department of Revenue to be reviewed and verified that it's correct. And we feel very confident even in that 800,000 number that's on the previous sheet, or actually right there in the new growth in the first column.
Well, thank you for this, by the way, because that was part of my concern last year when we had this conversation, was we had the UPS in there, and I'm glad it's not there now. I think that's a more realistic and more conservative new growth analysis.
Well, when they closed in November, right, they were like, let's do this TIF, we're gonna, it was like, and then they went radio silent. So that was very sobering for me to be working so hard to get you on board, get town meeting on board, and then they paid $18 million for 200 acres of land, and they just disappear.
It's very difficult. I don't know how municipalities do it, banking on them. I mean, even Boston just did it with GE. They're in, and then the CEO changes and they're out. That's how it goes.
They were giving away more than they were getting. I would argue for for Boston anyways.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, except for the income tax piece for the state would be great. Sewer enterprise, these are just direct offsets, obviously self-sustaining through an enterprise fund, so I don't have to elaborate on that. The grand total revenues for each, you can see the bottom line and what the growth is. So this budget is getting bigger. But again, the backdrop of this, for me, and you guys can tell me if I should deviate from this, is the service level we provide compared to other communities is what, you know, my guiding principle has been. So the next slide may or may not cover that. So I'll get to that in a second. So all of these are just a breakout of municipal wages, true cost for 20, health insurance, all of those, what's that account number, 491, 421 account, for all employee benefits, health insurance, Medicare, Worcester County Retirement, group life insurance, and town insurance is also in that number. So when you shake that out, it is an 8% growth from 20 to 21, and then the subtotal for municipal is 13 million, and then we do the fire and police, public safety piece, unclassified. Those are your hydrants, town insurance. There's a big laundry list inside the budget book that breaks this out. So again, we just took those and just rolled them out across in 2025. Road stabilization stays the same. Assessments, those are your charges and assessments that's held on the back of the cherry sheet, which is inclusive now of the 71,000.
That's why you see the 11% jump in 21.
Overlay, that's the money you put aside for people who want abatements or exemptions or contest their values. We funded it at 150 this year. Because of the reval, probably 2021, we'd need to bump that back up. There's a lot of money, and the Board of Assessors is releasing 200,000 of overlay for this town meeting that we propose to put towards taking down dead trees and replacing them with new trees, hopefully on private property versus the public right of way, but that's a nuance we're yet to get over. Raise and appropriate for October, these are just kind of like a holdback. We have it available to us for raise and appropriate and unemployment for other articles that happen in October. And then in subtotals, and then you get the total for all of those things excluding basically the school department, correct? On this particular sheet?
Yeah.
Okay. Since you did that sheet, are there any pieces there that you found interesting that the board should know? For either one of those slides?
Not that you haven't already.
All right. I'm going quick, I apologize.
No, I was just actually just to say something about that. Could you put this together in a packet for us?
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I could, I mean, it's,
The PowerPoint?
yeah, it's just challenging to
I know it's hard to
grasp
do.
all this right now.
I know it's
So there's debt service that totals 6.2 million. Some of it's excluded, some of it's not. Some of it's sewer department. Some of it's inside the levy limit, like One Grafton Common, for example. So this just continues to just show you what 2020 was, percentage increase to 2021. There's nothing really here that's jumping out except for the surplus deficit piece.
Well, yeah, the school department, because we didn't know what they were asking for, they're at 0% in 2021 because we haven't had to talk with Jay yet. So everything from 2022 to 25 in the surplus deficit column is not a true number because we have them at 0 right now in 21. So
Right,
that
but-
number goes up or down, that changes what happens in 22 to 25.
Just want to comment on that. So there were some preliminary numbers that were shared last year for the TRICOM committee meeting when we were discussing the projections, I think, for the second time. But would it be fair that even on the document that's still out there on the school's website today that shows FY21 at the projected need, not the actual need, was at 5.29%, but you got there showing, 8 100-something%, right? So 8/10. Is that
Yeah,
point?
0.8. It's because we just.
I have to tell you something. My eyes are struggling, but thank you for correcting me. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But that's 0.08% increase. So would it be prudent to utilize the information that was developed last year to start putting in there.
Well, since I'm meeting with him on Thursday, I'll be able to put that in there.
So
Right when I meet with him.
the information we got last year was projected level service need, 5.29% increase for FY21. The total new money ask was $1.9 million. What would happen, just if you just assume for the sake of argument,
It's an $800,000 delta
right?
at that rate.
No, did you say 700,000?
Well, six.
Approximately 8.
Yeah.
I rounded.
Okay.
529.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1.95 versus what you had there, which was 1.1.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's about 800, give or take.
So this is the Excel sheet that this is on, obviously. You're gonna have to pull that up a bit. So was that 560?
What?
That's 560.
Yep. So if they received 529, you would have a deficit of $560,000. Can you see that? I can.
Yeah.
But there's two things you still have to remember. When I started this conversation about the requests from departments, Jen, for example, when recreation's gone down, I think a couple fractions of a percent for 2 years in a row. So there could be reductions and there could be increases in revenues that they would propose to offset any of those increases.
Right.
So
Sure.
there could be some there. One of the other pieces we have to talk to Jay, when he 529 or if it's higher, they just passed that piece for the school to get the money on the roof for the solar. How much is that? Is that part of that number? Is that in addition to? You know what I mean? Those are the types of things we need to.
Not
Yeah.
part of the rest of the members. I was part of those conversations. So that is encompassed, I think, over a 20-year depreciation value. Or there was one option, I believe, where they could take a one lump sum. But it's very little bit. I mean, when you look at the whole grand scheme of things, but it is something that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
Putting the solar.
30, 40,000 bucks, whatever the number is.
Yeah, don't quote me on it, but that was what was.
But yeah, I mean,
explained.
again, we're making general assumptions about things that we know, because we deal with for the past 11 budget cycles. I don't know, other than the email Jay sent me today and the conversation I'll have with him on Thursday, and then that document that you have, Ed, is even different than the most
Sure.
recent number I got. So I didn't want to make that assumption, but if you put that in there, you can certainly see if they grow
Yeah.
at that rate, you have a 560 delta.
Okay. That just sort of gives us an idea of the ballpark of what we might be dealing with, but we'll have to see. Did we only grow them at 4.5% last year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Because that was the second to last year of the override, right?
Right.
All that money went, so we had to go down a little bit.
Right.
And then 1 year during that override cycle, they did go down about a little bit below that point too.
Right.
I don't know, can you go back out to the last couple of slides? Because I just, for the comparison purposes for where we stand with other communities, I think is important for us to think about in terms of the tax impact. Well, I think this is important too, because there's the FTMS that we use for financial trend monitoring system that ICMA, did ask, communities to punch all this data in to see if they're marginal, if they're in good shape, and if they're in bad shape. These are just some components of that FTMS. We haven't updated that. We need to do it, but these are pieces that'll get plugged in. So I just try to show the history of free cash from 16 to 20. It's up and down. This is probably one of the lowest years of free cash. The makeup of free cash is turn back and excess revenue that we didn't anticipate getting. Stabilization, we just show that growth as well. It's really a function or a percentage of the operating budget. We'd want to be between 5 and 10 under the policies of the board and the finance committee. We're getting to about 7% in fiscal 21 because the budget's growing more than we're putting in. If we have money to put in, we would put it in either October or in May. That was gives you a little historic perspective of free cash, but in terms of stability, there's not a lot of variation between those two numbers, or between any of those numbers.
Tim, how come it only goes to fiscal year 18 for stabilization?
The DOR only had to 18 on
Oh,
record,
okay.
but I think it's actually $100,000 higher than that. I think it's actually 3.8 right now because we put $100,000 in.
Yeah,
So-
but we're earning interest every day. It's even higher than that.
Okay.
But since we pulled it right from DOR, 'cause that's what other people can see unless they call us and ask, we wanted to be consistent
Okay.
with what they would see if they went to the Department of Revenue.
Okay.
Important component that I didn't touch on, not in free cash or stabilization, but the 800,000 in new growth that we're gonna raise and appropriate most of that at town meeting. I think it's unprecedented that 46% of that number is from commercial growth. Not just resident, it's never been that big before. So 56 is residential, yes, but usually it's 75 residential, 25 commercial. So we are moving the needle ever so slightly to get out of this, 93-7 scenario for commercial versus residential, but every baby step to get us closer to commercial growth.
But I will say that goes part of our goals workshop that we had a few weeks ago, where we were saying, what are we doing and how do we disclose that and tell that story to the community that, this number has grown. This ratio, it's ever so slightly, but it is trending in a more positive fashion. I think
Yeah,
you
I
and
don't know
spoke
how,
about
I
this.
don't know, I mean, we can say we're doing it, but, the market, in my eyes, are driving what people invest.
Well, business friendly
help them.
community, we help them, and all of the things we do to provide assistance to anyone, not only starting building, but maintaining a businesses, within the community as well, totally crucial, to looking long-term, because we know it's not gonna solve anything overnight. I think it's a good point to bring up, I think.
So I wanted to make mention of that, because I think that's an important piece. But with that flip coin, people will argue with those values. They will go to the assessors, they will ask for, challenge the value, they might ask for an abatement, they may be granted an abatement, but that's why you have the overlay account there to absorb that stuff. So I just didn't want you to be shocked if people get a bill and it's high, it's because the value is justified in the state's eyes and in the assessor's eyes. So, three components to that story. We'll go to the next slide. The 5-year capital plan, as we see it right now, we try to take every department and what their needs would be. We are being aggressive with the fire department. We have 2 capital leases with the fire trucks that we're purchasing now. One's here, one's being built. So we just lay it out to 2025 as we know it. The school department updates theirs quite a bit. But out of the free cash, that 1.9 million, 200,000 off the top, 212,800 is gonna be peeled away for those leases. And then if we wanna keep a balance of $1 million, we'll only have 6 and change to spend, or 7 and change to spend on capital for 2020. So you can see that 2020 going out, that subtotal's pretty good at 1,732,32,15,29. So obviously, if we don't do something in 22, the number in 23 is going to get higher.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't account for that because it's linear. Those who know now, I can't tell you what the projects are for each one of those. If you ask me that question, I'll tell you, I'll email it to you tomorrow. So that's an extraction. This is the backdrop in which we live against these communities. Shrewsbury's really not one that I would compare us to, but they're on the list. Westboro, the same thing. But in terms of comparable tax rates, we are right in the middle. Rates really don't mean nothing relative to value, and that's when the assessor's reval component comes in. I will tell you, when you set a tax rate in November, it will probably be lower than what it is right now because of that growth in commercial. Average single-family tax bill, again, the backdrop of which we work, we're not overly burdened according to this chart relative to our peers. The piece that I've never been able to extract clearly from this is what people's debt is for this average single-family tax bill. So Westboro, I don't think they have any debt outside the levy limit. I don't think they've excluded anything, even for their 2 projects for the school certainly will be, but not the police station or the new town hall renovation. So that was all done inside the levy. So whatever they have for excluded, our excluded is probably, for every average tax bill is probably $500 of that tax bill annually goes to debt service. I don't know what it is in Oxford, I don't know what it is in Bellingham, but I'd be interested to know what percentage of their tax bills go there. That'll be another layer of an onion that we peel later on, but we just don't know that. But overall, we are you know, not too high, not too low. But for the service levels compared to all those communities to our left, I don't want to say anything disparaging, but I think we have a lot of robust programming compared to those communities to our left, and even challenging some off to the right. And don't forget, Holliston, our income levels are higher than Holliston's in terms of earned income comparatively to Holliston versus Grafton. So it's a good value. I'm not trying to sell you Grafton, but the value that, you know, that rate is assessed against, again, we're right in the middle compared to our contemporaries, if you will, our surrounding communities. So that's the value. Still just under 400,000 is the average single-family tax value. And then the FTMS, I already covered this, but all those things are pieces that go into a nice one-page spreadsheet that and gives you a red and a yellow and a green. Whether you're in trouble, it's red. If you're marginal, it's yellow. And if you're in good shape, it's green. I think the last time we did this presentation, we had 2 that were in the yellow, none in the red, and the rest were in green. But we can plug the factors in that FTMS tells us we should plug in to see if we're fiscally viable, if you will. And that second to last sentence, using this model, local governments can provide a report to policymakers, citizens, employees, bond rating agencies, and to anyone else who may be interested in the financial well-being of the community. So this is kind of like the thing that we use to make sure we're not teetering on the brink, if you will. So, and I'm hoping that this stuff complements what you guys are doing and what the CIPC bylaw, if that gets passed, you know, I'm hoping it can all just level out. At the end of the day, if there's more money that's needed, we have to, there's no, in my mind, there's no other way to do it except to ask the taxpayers, unless you want to make catastrophic reductions to the budget.
I think that, you know, a lot of what the GSC is doing is going to use a lot of the data that you've already collected on the benchmarking aspect, just particularly with regard to, you know, average family tax bill as well as tax rate. I think that it would be interesting, you're right, to see what their debt burden is. I thought that DOR tracked that, but I could be wrong. I'll have to go back.
They might. I haven't dug that deep.
I think they do.
Yeah, but I don't think they're very up to date. I think it probably only goes up to like FY19 or something like that. So that'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see, of course, you know, service levels. You know, what does Ashland offer for that much more tax dollar than what Grafton does? Also, be kind of interesting to see, you know, per capita income, and even, you know, personal debt. I mean, we're talking about investments that people make in the community. How burdened are people? You know, when you talk to them about an ability to invest a little bit more, even if it's a small amount, for either a service that they use or a service that they know that their community members use, versus, well, I'm trying to save for retirement. I've got a college tuition payment to make. I've got to fix my house. That will also be part of, you know, broader community-wide conversations that I think that the GSC is going to want to have with people. This is a good first step as far as what we do here, and I know the conversation that we're going to have, I think, going forward. I think what I would like to see after you guys speak to Jay this week is to fill in some of the blanks on, number one, what the school is going to be asking for going forward, and then let's extend that out. And, you know, I don't have to tell you how to do your job, in whatever means that you think is appropriate to give us 5-year projections for 22, 23, 24. Because, you know, certainly the school ask isn't going to be 0, but you know, maybe it's not going to be 5.29, maybe it's not going to be 7, maybe it's 4.75. You know, I know that the document that Peter referred to is still up on the website. And there's a letter dated January 3rd, and that Jay had broken out his projections at 5.29, 4.75, 4.12, and 4.13. You'd have to ask him where he came up with those percentages, but you know, that's what he had on this January 3rd correspondence. So if we can see that in projections going forward for perhaps the next meeting, that would be helpful.
I would like, I think that we should have school committee come in for a workshop, something that informal, that we can just talk honestly and openly about the budget and what we're gonna see down the line, and we can ask questions on there, because school department obviously is such a large portion of our budget. I just think it would be sooner rather than later, just come in, have an open dialogue, just, again, a workshop though, nothing formal, just so that we can start a conversation.
Sure, I agree. I think we should do that sooner rather than later. Again, I want to give Tim the opportunity to talk to Jay, see what we can put together for a document for projections, and then have school committee come in. I'd even suggest finance committee be there as well.
I don't know, just if we wanna, I mean, I appreciate you thinking, I just think to start, if we just are having an open dialogue, the number of the people in the room does matter, I think.
All right. Any other comments on the FY21 projections? All right. Seeing as how we're sort of rolling into scheduling anyway. We had potentially a workshop meeting scheduled for next week, and I had in my head had it as a projections meeting, but we were able to get this done a week early. So does anybody have a burning need to have a meeting next week?
It is the high holidays if people are interested in that date for the 8th, for Rosh Hashanah.
So let's not do it. I think we're meeting.
We don't have anything in that account. We have a folder that we just throw things in for next meetings, and there's nothing in there right now.
Okay. Because we've got also the 15th, the 17th, and then the 21st.
We won't meet the 15th, or the 22nd, right, because it's the day after.
No. Right, the day after, right.
And we won't meet will we meet the 15th when we have a meeting on the 17th?
Well, that depends how you,
Okay.
if you do the 8th, I mean, right,
There's some stuff for the 15th, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Is that too
That's
soon?
fine.
Is that? Laura, could you come up for a second for scheduling purposes?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, it's just convenient that you're here.
Where do isn't it?
Yeah, it's super.
Okay,
Thank you.
No. Where do I go?
Just right in the middle.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know your meeting schedule.
I do. Yeah.
What is your meeting schedule?
It's tough because we often meet when you guys meet.
Yeah.
We are meeting on the 8th, and our budget is going to be discussed. If anybody wants to watch from home or come, I'd love a workshop and we can chat and figure that out. I'm always open to a workshop, and I can talk to my members about that. And then we meet every other week. So we don't have a 15th, but then we do have the 22nd.
Okay.
But
Why don't
we can move,
No, don't.
obviously I can't make that decision tonight anyway, but.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
So we've got, Tim will meet with Jay this week.
Yeah.
We'll have a better sense of what the projections are going to show. And then we'll meet again on the 15th. Maybe what we do then is sort of talk about, maybe we'll have this discussion again, put the projections on as a discussion item, talk amongst ourselves about what the next step is going to be, and then reach out to you guys at that point.
Perfect.
If there's any substantive, I don't want to just sit, because we've done this a couple times now, where we kind of sit around and look at each other. If there's a substantive conversation that we want to have, and an obstacle that we need to overcome financially, and if there's a concern again about service levels, as Tim mentioned, then we're going to have to take the next step. And not to be, I think I'm being super vague here. Maybe I don't need to be. If it gets to a point where we don't think we can provide the services that this town has come to expect and deserve as far as schools go,
Yeah.
and we can't otherwise raise that money, then we're going to have a conversation about
Yeah.
income.
Right.
And I want to have that conversation sooner rather than later.
Yes, as do we. So we announced our last week at our meeting what our number is. So it's not a secret.
What's your number?
It was 5.9.
Okay.
Sorry,
I missed it. I didn't.
No,
get to
that's
watch.
fine. It's fine, and we are going to discuss it more next Tuesday
Okay.
as well. So I don't want to. And I know Tim and Jay are meeting on Thursday, and they'll get more. So
Okay.
so I do believe there'll be a
Sure,
delta.
sure.
And I would love and I think a workshop is fantastic just to talk.
Sure. Yeah. We
Start
can.
all the conversations as early as we can, and we tried. Sorry, not to take over your meeting. But we're trying, as are you guys, just to do it a lot sooner this year. That was our goal, to get everything out early so we can have these discussions and talk and make decisions
Yeah, that's a good idea.
as a team, which is what we really want.
Okay, that makes sense.
but the 5 point, it's an easy math equation, right? It's 2.1 million. That's almost exactly all new money, so that, it's an easy
Okay.
It's an easier discussion, because now you know that total nut you need to cover is 800,000.
Yeah, so that is 800,000,
Right.
which is,
Did I say that earlier?
and
You
we've,
did.
we've sort of been down this road. Last year, we had to tackle something like this, and it started out being a higher number, and it became a smaller number. We were able to pull it off, but, we were able to do it. We moved certain capital items were paid out of places that they ordinarily hadn't been paid out of, and my worry is we're gonna run out of maneuvers, okay, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's do that. Let's schedule the next meeting for October 15th if we need to come up with something substantive that we want to tackle with the school committee and definite questions and a discussion about a roadmap forward. Then I would recommend a workshop with them, again, sooner rather than later. I don't know what people's schedules would be like, but that would be preferable for me. And then what else do we have on here? So coordination with town moderator, that's Thursday the 17th.
Yes.
And then we have town meeting, we'll be meeting in executive session before then. And then that's it. So far until November 5th.
Is this memo, this is kind of what Nancy Hazen used to do 8 years ago, so we published this at the beginning of the quarter. Is this what you thought it would look like?
Yeah.
Is this all right?
Yep, I like it.
Thank you.
I think it just gives people a good heads up in
Yeah.
advance. I like this. That's a good idea. Okay, any further discussions on the meeting schedule?
Thank you.
All right, moving on. So we had the meeting minutes for the goals meeting here on item number A. This is a great list, and I want to keep referring back to this as the year goes on so that we can start incorporating action items for these goals to be taken up. I think citizen surveys is one that we can probably start talking about pretty soon. And you guys tell me a lot of these are yours, so I'd be interested as we go forward to hear from you about when you want these placed on an agenda so that we can take action on them. Some of them are going to need, for instance, if we pursue inclusionary zoning, that's going to need to be something that happens in May. But, sidewalk connectivity, I think that's, something we can start talking about sooner rather than later to make plans. How does that factor into capital requests? How can the state help us out a little bit on certain items? How can the state help us out for sidewalks that are on arguably state roads?
They will do little. They will do little.
So not
So what we need to do is figure out, we know the roads we're gonna do in 2020 and 21, where there are no sidewalks or there are, and figure out where you can make them better or where you're gonna add them for those street projects.
Right.
We haven't seen that list yet, right, of the roads, or did I miss it?
Yeah, no, we have the list for,
Oh, okay,
that'll start, the town meeting will vote on.
okay.
We thought we'd send those to you tomorrow as well,
Okay.
or the next day.
All right. So I will entertain a motion. Mr.
Motion
Carlson.
that the board approve the goals meeting minutes for August 27, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'll entertain a motion for September 10th.
Mr. Chair, I motion that the select board approve meeting minutes for September 10th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the 17th.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve select board meeting minutes for September 17, 2019 as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.